All right. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. All right, all right. Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I do want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. I want to give a shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. We have a stellar night for you. Scott Ritter is going to be joining us later in the show. We do have an update coming from Gaza. This recent announcement that Benjamin Netanyahu just made. It's crazy times at this point, ladies and gentlemen, but we all have each other. Tonight's theme is, how did this happen? And that's what we're going to go through tonight with each of these stories. I do want you to ask that question. How did this happen? How did we get here? And that's what we're going to try to answer for you tonight, ladies and gents. Let's go ahead and start out by saying hello to some of the comrades in the chat. What's up? What's up? What's up? Greetings, Kaiwan says, I call Nicholas Flint as he's like an America First guy, but his politics are very distal Democrat in nature, kind of like the 1930s progressivism. Interesting. What's up, Brian? It would be great to start bringing guests on who are experts in building parallel economies and currencies so that we can operate among ourselves without recognizing the unconstitutional government. Oh, that's a good tip there, Brian. If you know of some, please let me know. Please email me and let me know about that. That is a good idea. Shout out to Blockbuster says, hi. Greetings. New York Varsity says, make sure Scott Ritter is awake from his nap. Yeah, I messaged him already earlier today. Oh, man. Shout out to Hannah says, I'm here early for this one. Okay. What's going on? Rain says, wowza, I'm really surprised by your highest poll number. I haven't looked at it as of recent, but I am curious, guys. Make sure you answer that poll question. I'm curious to see how many of you know someone that is on SNAP, someone that is a federal employee, someone that is both, or you know neither, right? So I'm curious about that. Shout out to Chris says, yay, love Scott Ritter. Greetings, Chisel says, patiently waiting. It's like the 50 Cent song. I've been patiently waiting. Violet, what's up? Violet says, I'm on Snap. Okay, so we do have someone in the audience that is on it. Shout out to CBC Voter says, happy Tuesday, Sabby and Eric T. Red. What's up? What's up? Greetings, VD. Believe it or not, I've been siding with Nick Fuentes over the last couple of months. What Carson did bring in Colombians to destroy Black communities with drugs is sinister. Interesting. Shout out to Justice by Karma says, hell yeah. Everybody is flocking in here early for this juicy show today. Can't wait. What is up? Greetings, part-time hippie. Regarding Nick Fuentes, etc. Nick, did you miss the point of The Big Lebowski? I see someone else has seen that movie. Interesting. Shout out to Kenman says, love Sabby. Love you too, Kenman. Greetings, Mary Beth says, hi, my beautiful peeps. Shout out to, I don't want to click on the same, almost click on the same name. Giovanni says, bravissima, Sabrina, an abbraccio da Roma. Thank you. And very pretty in Italian. Shout out to Cloudness says, happy Tuesday, Sabby and everyone in the building. Salute, fam. B1. Greetings, Ryan. The Democrats were so hot to try to impeach President Trump for anything and everything the first time. How come they don't use murder for a reason? Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Greetings, Alippa says, Sabby time. And of course, shout out to my producer, Eric T. Red says, hey, hi there, one and all. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started because we do have quite a bit to get into before Scott joins the show. SF, you look slimmer and amazing every time I see you. Gorgeous as usual. Oh, thank you. People have been telling me that, you guys know I've been on like this fitness journey. I started weightlifting about a year ago. It's been a little over a year, and it's interesting. Other people can see you making progress before you do. So very, very interesting. Okie dokie. Tonight's theme is how did this happen? If you have not done so, folks, please be sure to smash that like button for us so we can get started and get this show on the road. We do want to go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate you, fam. If you are interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. We have the ultimate crew. Don't forget about the Sabinators. There's a group called Sabsters, and I think they're pretty based as well. And then we also have Sabbies. I don't know why. I always want to say it like that. Sabbies. Shout out to them as well. And don't forget, we also have a group called Members. All of their names are listed here, and you'll also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker throughout the live stream. I want to give a shout out to new Sabby patrons. We like to call them newbies. Let's give it up for Yusuf and Julian Brown Priceman. Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate your support. And welcome, ladies and gents. We have a big show tonight, folks. Big show. So let's go ahead and show that thumbnail so you can see what we are discussing tonight. Oh, buddy, hold on to your horses. It's going to be a hell of a ride. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing It Finally Happened. Nick Fuentes versus Tucker Carlson. Believe it or not, after Tucker Carlson called Nick Fuentes a Fed, sorry about that. It's funny. Tucker Carlson finally sat down to interview Nick Fuentes, and there are some moments in that interview that I do want to discuss. There's one thing in particular that I did notice that Nick Fuentes is doing that we do have to debunk here on this show. We're also going to discuss, of course, Scott Ritter will be here with us later in the show to talk about the update on Venezuela. We don't want to sleep on that. We do have to continue to discuss what's been happening there. We know that Trump implemented the CIA in Venezuela. I'll give you that update with him. And then also we are discussing the new announcement that was made by Benjamin Netanyahu earlier today about Gaza. So excited for that discussion. We are also discussing Trump's bread lines. We have an update here about SNAP. If you live in my state, in particular in Massachusetts, I'm here to tell you we do not have good news for Massachusetts. But all in all, the country is struggling right now, and I'm going to show you the bread lines. We're going to get into, the fact that the government is still shut down. People need food, people need help, and I think that's where we as a community, that's where we come in, right? Because the thing is, politicians will let you down, the government will let you down, and this is why we have to be there for each other. We're also going to discuss, and God, can somebody just give Ashanti a big hug? R&B singer Ashanti has been ridiculed. Someone sent this to me, and I was like, I don't usually get into celebrity stories on this show, but this one I do want to talk about because I do not like the comments that are coming her way, and I just want someone just to give Ashanti a big hug, a big hug. And last but not least, if you have not heard about this, Matt Taibbi is failing way off the radar, man. Way off the radar. We talked about it a couple of months ago about his refusal to discuss Gaza or even to discuss the censorship that people have been experiencing because they are pro-Palestinian. Censorship is one of his big causes. And he just wrote another article where he's just really falling hard. I don't know who or what got to Matt Taibbi, but something has grabbed a hold of him. So we'll get into all of that. All right, ladies and gents, again, tonight's theme is how did this happen? So let's go ahead and get into it. If you have not done so, smash the like button. Thank you. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. Let's get into this first story, which I think is impacting a lot of people. Couple of days ago, we did discuss the SNAP benefits, right? Like what would happen if the government does not reach a decision on the budget, that people would be impacted come November, those that are receiving SNAP benefits. I just want to show you one of the bread lines that I saw circulating around on social media. This is in Landover, Maryland. That's where the Washington Redskins play. So kind of near Washington, D.C. Look at this line of people. All of these people are in the bread line. All these people. And see, all of these people waiting to get food. Now, this is Landover, Maryland, right? So we're talking about a city near DC where a lot of the people who live in that area may work for the federal government. And you see all these people lined up. Just because they're lined up there, that doesn't mean they're homeless. There are federal employees lined up to get food because we are getting closer and closer to November and people need food. And we told you before about those SNAP benefits. I want to show you this one here as well. Federal employees in line. Federal workers are lining up at food banks in Washington, D.C. area to receive critical assistance for their families as hundreds of thousands of furloughed government employees brace for a second month without a paycheck. So here is the line of federal employees lined up for food.
When I got here at noon, there were actually cars lined up, federal employees that needed food. It's just very heartbreaking to see many of my fellow federal employee colleagues out here needing food, and I just hope that they're able to get what they need.
A lot of people, this is their first time ever accessing a program like this. Our 2025 hunger report just recently came out. We were already seeing around the DMV a 36% number of food insecure folks in the area, which is about 1.5 million households. So that's before the government shut down.
Most of my colleagues, they work in the federal government over 20 years plus, and they don't know what tomorrow is going to bring for them. And it's kind of, what is going to happen to me tomorrow? I'm not secure anymore.
These are federal workers, okay? So these aren't people who are sitting on their butts, not trying to get a job. These are people who have jobs with the federal government, but they're not getting paid. This is another example of people living paycheck to paycheck, right? All it takes is for one crisis to happen, and all of a sudden you're in this situation. The United States has a lot of money. No one in this country should go hungry, especially children. There's no excuse. This isn't a third world country. But this is where we're at now, folks. This is where we're at now, how people are impacted by these shutdowns. They also talked about this on CNN as well. I want to get into a little bit of detail here.
Let's dig deeper into the impact of SNAP food assistance running out, a program that helps to feed some 42 million Americans. Joining us live now is Kyle Wade, the president and CEO of the Atlanta Community Food Bank. Kyle, thank you so much for being with us. With SNAP benefits or food stamps effectively expected to run out November 1st because we're being told the well has run dry because of this government shutdown. Just talk to us first and foremost about the kind of surge in demand you're expecting, given that there are 42 million Americans across the country who rely on this program.
Well, it's great to be here, and I think the starting point for answering your question is just to acknowledge that lines are already very long at food pantries all across the country. At my food bank, we've seen the demand for food assistance increase by about 70% over the last 3.5 years due to inflation. There's just a lot more economic pressure on families across our community. And as you noted, there are just a really large number of people, 42 million people across the country, 1.5 million people here in the state of Georgia, that rely on the SNAP program to connect them with the nutrition that they need. In Georgia alone, they receive about $250 million a month in those SNAP benefits. Last year, our food bank distributed across the entire year $280 million worth of groceries. And so, in effect, 1 month's worth of activity is equal to what we do in an entire year. It would be impossible for us to make up the full difference of what is being disrupted. And we know it's just going to add to the lines that are already very long at the food pantries that are serving our communities today.
So what was interesting that he said there is that they have seen the demand for this increase by 70% over the past 3 years. So we're talking about, again, before the government even shut down. Now, that's pretty interesting because remember, one of the things that Biden said when he was in office was that, look what we did. We cut child poverty in half. And remember, they stopped that short. They stopped that quicker than it was supposed to happen. Guys, these things are not improving for people, right? So we have people in this country that are food insecure. We have people in this country that are housing insecure. But we just gave all that money to Argentina for Milei to throw a concert. So it's not that we don't have the money. We have the money, but it's going to different places. It's going to places where it should not go instead of to people here. This is a reality, folks. When people lose their jobs, when people are laid off, when there's a government shutdown and you work for the federal government, people are not getting paid. When people don't get paid, how are they going to buy food? So we have a problem in this country where our government just doesn't give a damn. Some people are saying that the government failed the American people. I mean, to say that they failed us would mean that they actually tried to help us in the first damn place. So they didn't fail us. They just don't give a damn. They are willing to walk over working class people, but they're not willing to walk over billionaires. They're not willing to walk over corporations. Hell, we can go back to 2008 during the housing crisis if you need to remind yourself of who they really care about. When all those elders lost their homes, they decided to bail out Wall Street. Now that happened under Obama's administration. So it really doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or Republican that's in the White House. At the end of the day, both of those parties make sure that the billionaires remain billionaires. They make sure that Wall Street is protected, and whatever happens to the rest of us, they don't care. They work for their donors. Let's continue on a little bit more here.
So the lines are already long, as you point out. You said there's been a 70% increase in the number of people relying on your food bank because of inflation. And then on top of that, you've got this potential interruption to the SNAP program happening on November 1st. So just explain to us what you are doing at the food bank to sort of support people who might need extra help because of the disruption to SNAP access. And what I mean by that is, increased distribution, longer hours, hiring more volunteers. Just walk us through that side of things.
Sure. So it's kind of all of the above in the way that we're approaching this current crisis. Certainly, it starts with just making sure we are in dialogue with our elected leaders, both here at the state level and up in DC. To help them understand what we are seeing and experiencing and expecting in terms of demand in our community. And hopefully that will help them as they go through the process of trying to resolve this situation. We are working with a variety of different local partners to schedule some targeted distribution activity to get more food and groceries close to where there are concentrations of federal employees who, as your team noted, are also really impacted by this shutdown. Folks who are not going to get paid this week for the first time. We're trying to get food to those folks. And then we're working with our suppliers to both get more donated food and to purchase more food that we can then route through the community as we get deeper into this shutdown. This time of year is...
Again, look at all these people in line, guys. Look at all these people.
Our highest volume period of the year for food distribution already. And so our inventory is under significant strain as it is. We're going to have to work very hard to go get more food to support that demand. For my food bank locally, we're hoping to increase our distribution capacity by as much as 30%. To support increased demand. But again, if all of those SNAP recipients turn to us for help, who normally get help from the SNAP program, there's no way we can meet that full increase.
So first of all, I do want to say kudos to this gentleman and those at his food bank that are helping the people. He's just being honest. They are used to distributing a certain amount of food each month, probably each week for some of them. And there has been an increase in the need because people are not being paid because the government is shut down. And, it's just, they are holding you hostage. It's like seriously, like our government right now, they're playing with people's livelihood. They're playing with your ability to be able to provide food for your family. And this should not happen in the United States of America. And here we are, because the priority is not us. The priority is not the working class people. The priority is the billionaires. The priority is Wall Street. The priority are the corporations. And we've seen this play out time and time again. And I can't help but think all the people who are lined up, who are there just because they're not getting paid. What would, if we had a UBI, how would that really help them? It would help. It would help. So you never know what's going to happen, right? I'm thinking about how many people that are in line that have families, that have kids, right? So people ask, how did this happen? And a lot of people will say because the government shut down. But as he just told you, they saw a 70% increase over the past 3 years. So it's been a 3-year period where people are becoming food insecure in this country. It happened because our government doesn't prioritize, number one, the American people, number two, the working class. And if they don't prioritize the working class, they damn sure don't care about the poor. Talk to anyone who grew up poor and they'll tell you. there does seem to be a little bit of stigma here, right? Like there's a lot of assumptions that people who are receiving these benefits are people who are just being lazy. They don't want to get a job. They just want to take a handout. Listen to this woman's experience here.
The people who receive SNAP benefits and EBT are just lazy. Hi, my name's Lacey. I'm a single mom to a medically complex child, and I work full time. I also have to pay my rent. I also have to pay my her medical bills. I also have to attend IEP meetings, which I have to go to a meeting about how IEPs are no longer. Hi, hello? I have to get another job. I have to pay for childcare. Do you want to know how expensive preschool is? Do you? I have to apply to programs to help cover. Oh, wait, those programs are no longer. Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, single moms, single parents, and we don't need to get into the reason as to why someone is single. That's besides the point, right? The point is we live in a wealthy country that is not providing for its people. And as much as the US government, as much as these politicians, they want to point their fingers at countries like China's feeding their people. I don't know. China has better infrastructure than we do here in the United States. And part of that has to do with the fact that I don't know, because they decided to prioritize their people. Instead of trying to implement wars all over the world, put all this money in defense, they decided to prioritize their people, something that this country is not doing. If you are in Massachusetts, for example, there's more to this story. It's not just about the breadlines. SNAP benefits won't go out in November for Massachusetts. Now, listen to this. So this is one of the states, but it's not the only one where they have already told people we're just not going to be able to do it. The USDA, which oversees SNAP, said that there will not be enough funding to give enrolled Americans their November food benefits due to the government shutdown. More than 1 million Bay Staters will be without SNAP benefits, according to the state. That's right here, my state. Bottom line, the well has run dry. Goes on to say here, Massachusetts is directing those struggling to pay for groceries to local food banks and charity hotlines. Here's what to know and how to get food assistance. So once again, it goes back to the community. We have to help each other. Shout out to everyone who came to my mutual aid workshop. If you've come to one of them at some point in time, because this is the message that I've been trying to get across. And those of us at RBN have been trying to get out there to people. At the end of the day, we have to rely on each other, right? This is where people are going to be looking for mutual aid. People are going to be looking for, is anybody donating food? Is anybody out there, trying to help us? Because like I said, the food banks are limited with what they can do because they're used to serving a certain number of people per month. And now that demand has increased. So this is what I meant about building dual power. Starting mutual aid groups doesn't have to be like this professional organization. Just get a bunch of your buddies together and start giving food to people. Hell, you could do this tomorrow. People need help. And we have politicians in DC who just decide, yeah, we're just gonna, we have beef with each other. So we're just gonna play around with people's food insecurity. This is where we're at this point in time. And like a lot of us are arguing with each other over red versus blue, when the reality, I'm seeing all these people line up to get food. You know who's not in those lines? Billionaires. You know who's not worried about if they're going to get paid or not? Billionaires. Even some of the millionaires, because be honest, some of the millionaires, you working for billionaires too. So at the end of the day, like they don't have to worry about none of this. When the government shuts down, billionaires are not worried if they're going to get paid. When the government shuts down, they're not worried about how they're going to get their next meal. Hell, they have a chef. A lot of this comes back to economics. You will see here, Governor Healy is already sounding the alarm to people here in Massachusetts like, yeah, you need to go out in the community. And this is what it all comes back to, right? bringing it back to the community, we don't have the money.
SNAP is set to run out this week. The Trump administration says it's not going to be funding it. What's the state's plan?
You know, as I said last week, this is on Donald Trump. There's no need for this to happen. There's billions of dollars sitting right now in a contingency fund that the president can use to continue to fund SNAP, which is what every other president has done during a federal shutdown. So,
did everybody hear that? Didn't I tell you there's money there? So they are really punishing. Donald Trump is punishing the American people to get his agenda passed. I hope everybody remembers this when it comes time to vote in 2024. I'm going to tell you something else about Maura Healey in just a second here, because there's something she's leaving out about the funding as well.
I continue to join other governors in urging and calling in the strongest terms for Donald Trump to do the right thing, fund this using the contingency funds. Billions of dollars are available to continue SNAP benefits. I also continue in the meantime to tell people in Massachusetts there's no way that the state can backfill this money. And those who are able to, please contact your local food pantry, food bank, and see how you can support. Also consider making a donation to the United Way's United Response Fund.
The state does.
I'm going to interrupt that and tell you, don't donate to the United Way. If you have food, distribute the food yourself. I don't trust some of these other organizations out there. I'm just going to be clear with you guys. I'm not sure it always reaches the people anyway. If it's not a food bank, food pantry, that type of thing, some of these other orgs, I don't really trust. Just like I don't trust the Red Cross. I told you about my experience with them. So my whole thing is this. Maura Healey, what she is admitting from this conversation, she says, like, we don't have the money here in the state to do it. You know what Maura Healey is not telling you? Do you know how much money Boston, Massachusetts gives to Israel each year? $10 million. $10 million. And I think a lot of people didn't realize that some of these SNAP benefits, that funding comes from the federal government. The federal government gives the funds to the states so that they can implement those benefits. States only have so much money, you guys. So why are we wasting millions of dollars giving it to another country when we got people here that can't eat? That's the first problem. Second problem. Once again, you are seeing the federal government push responsibilities back to the states, right? Rather, it has been the Supreme Court saying, you know what? If you guys want to decide if it's a woman's right to choose, we're pushing that back to the states. This is a pattern that is continuing to happen over time. And I'm trying to wake people up to let you know, pay very close attention to local politics. A lot of times people only tune in when it's a presidential election. They are pushing more things back to the states. Another reason why we have to get communities involved. So it's a twofer here. One, the federal government is saying they are not giving this funding. And then two, the state is giving funds to Israel, but we don't have funds to feed people here. So we got a problem.
Have an $8 billion rainy day fund it can dip into.
Doesn't begin to cover this. $240 million a month is what the federal government sends to SNAP beneficiaries. There's no way that this state or any state can begin to backfill or cover this.
Should the legislature?
Okay, so I'm warning everybody now to let you know. So 250 million, that's how much we at least were getting from the federal government. But there's more to this story. Did you know this? I'm trying to show you how they're screwing over the working people, right? All these politicians that run and say that I'm going to help out the average man. I see you and you see me. Let me tell you something else that Donald Trump did. Trump canceled 94 million pounds of food aid. Here's what never arrived. Now, ProPublica obtained the records from the Department of Agriculture that detail the millions of pounds of food that never reached food banks because of the administration's cuts. So we got food just going to waste. Just going to waste. Let me make this larger so that you can read along here. All right, talks about a couple here that turned to a local food bank. Let's dive down into this part right about here. In the spring, The Trump administration abruptly cut $500 million in deliveries from a program that sends U.S. produced meat, dairy, eggs, and produce to food banks and other organizations across the country. About a quarter of that funding for the program received in 2024. The items that were delivered through the Emergency Food Assistance Program were some of the healthiest, most expensive items that organizations distribute. The cancellations of these deliveries comes at a critical time for food banks. Food insecurity is higher than at any time since the aftermath of the Great Recession. That is where this country is headed. ProPublica found this. The cancellations began mid-May when over 100 orders of 2% milk bound for 31 states were halted. The records show that 4,304 canceled deliveries between May and September across 50 states, Puerto Rico, and D.C. Experience this as an interactive story, or says experience that on ProPublica. It says all told, the deliveries accounted for nearly 94 million pounds of food. So again, shout out to the North Dakota Mirror for sharing this information. This is something people need to see. They are choosing not to give the people food. Now, I point this out because all these politicians, they talk a good game when they're running for office, right? But at the end of the day, they end up helping out who? The billionaire class. Now, let's add this together with another thing that is happening. Here are the layoffs that were just announced. UPS, 48,000. Amazon up to 30,000, Intel 24,000, Nestle 16,000, Accenture 11,000, Ford 11,000, Novo Nordisk 9,000, Microsoft 7,000, PwC 5,600, Salesforce 4,000, Paramount 2,000, Target 1,800, Kroger 1,000, Applied Materials 1,444, and Meta 600. So I just want you to add this to all the people who are not being paid because they're a federal employee and the people who are already on SNAP to begin with that are not getting the food that they need. And then you got all these people losing jobs. These employees will be replaced with AI models. You see, this whole talk about, oh, we want Trump to deport the immigrants because then those jobs will be available for us. Nope. Billionaires, the corporations, they always find another way. They have resources at their disposal that we do not have. And if you look at people like Elon Musk, Larry Fink, owner of BlackRock, if you look at these billionaires, they have been waiting for something like this for quite some time. Elon Musk loves AI. Sam Altman loves AI. Remember the whistleblower who came forward and was warning people about OpenAI and where it was headed and that it was going to be dangerous? All of a sudden, he shows up dead in his apartment. They want to replace us. Now, see, here's the difference. Donald Trump is telling you they want to replace you with immigrants, but at the end of the day, they want to replace all of us with machines, with robots. If you found a way to get the work done faster at a cheaper cost and you're greedy, this is what you lead towards. So all these people are about to lose their jobs, which means there's more people that's going to need money. And then even when it comes to the shopping carts, this is another one. New shopping carts will eliminate cashier jobs in America. So check this out. Once done, you complete payment on the cart, and he even shows you that it will accept EBT and food stamps as well. These are new shopping carts, guys. Watch this.
Yeah, I see the new technology is out, right? Yeah, I see the shit. Where you now shopping and shit. You can I think this is the one where you ring up your own shit, like when you put it in the cart. See, look at this shit. What that say? You see what this shit say? It say start shopping. You know what I'm saying? So you know what I think, right? This gonna put the motherfucking cashiers. No more. You ain't gonna need no cashiers. If you could just pay for your shit like this, continuous guess. Let's see what happened. First time using a new card. Yeah, got me. Let's see what they talking about. Add product. Face it. Yeah, you scan the shit as you put it in the cart.
And now they got you doing work for free. I told you guys a while back, I went to Kohl's and all of a sudden there was just one cashier and that was in the customer service section. And all the registers were gone that were there before. And it was just self-checkout. And I'm like, what is this? I posted that video on Twitter. I'll have to find it again, where I was like, so now I'm supposed to remove the sensor tag from my clothes. I don't work here. So now they got you working for free. You thinking that this is going to make things more convenient for you. You are doing free work. You're not a cashier. And there goes somebody's job. This is what they want. This is what we're coming to, folks. And you know what else this is going to cause? Less human interaction, which is another thing I've been alarming people about. I really don't like the way this whole thing is playing out. I am noticing people are spending less time with people in person and more time with people on social media and Discord chat groups. Now they got you, you ain't even got to face a cashier. Here we go. Just check out your stuff right here in the cart.
Place it in the cart. Don't hold item. Just put it in there. How to add produce.
We can jump
this
ahead.
New technology, man. Putting this shit right here. Y'all ain't got no business working any damn way. You know what I'm saying?
See?
Y'all ain't got no business working any damn way.
There you go. There goes somebody else's job. They have figured it all out. What this is going to mean is that as they continue to advance this type of technology, they're not going to have a job for everyone. People are going to be unemployed. And I don't want to scare people, but I think we need to wake up to this reality that this is what the billionaire class wants. They want a lot more AI. They approve of it. They want this type of tech here going on. They want this. They don't want us so much. There's a show called Black Mirror that's been talking all about this. If you haven't seen Black Mirror, watch it. They're letting you know what they're getting ready to do. Now, what can we do about it? Number one, again, this is where it goes back to the community. And there appears to be a guy in Detroit that is doing just that. As SNAP benefits come under threat, a Detroit farmer is stepping up to help fill the void. So this is what I'm talking about. It always comes back to us. Okay. So this is Travis Peters. Peters is the owner of Green Boots Veteran Community Horticulture Gardens and Marketplace in Detroit. He is encouraging anyone who may be facing food insecurity as SNAP benefits lapse to come to his farm on Tuesday to get a bag or two of produce, something to feed your family free of charge. And I think we have.
Hey, y'all, being serious here. This is like day 22 or so of the government shutdown. And they're talking about not issuing out SNAP benefits. And that's going to affect a lot of folks. And I'm going to tell you this, looking in my face, that if anybody feels that they need some food and it's getting tight, my food is free. You come on up to the farm next Tuesday, tap in with me, and you could get a bag or two of produce, something to feed your family. So don't even sweat that. And I'm sure that many of the urban farmers in the city are on the same type of time. If folks and families, if you're not going to receive your benefits to purchase food, your SNAP benefits, and you just feeling the pinch, do not hesitate to reach out. My name is Travis, Green Boots Veteran, Community Horticulture Gardens and Marketplace. Free food for y'all. Just come on up. Please.
So this is what I was talking about. At the end of the day, we have each other. We're going to save each other. We can't rely on these politicians to help us. And I think we need to teach more people how to grow their own food, right? So he knows how to do that, right? We need to get back to these types of days. If you go back to the hunter and gatherer days, right? Like, what did they do? They grew their own food and they hunted for meat. So I appreciate everything that this guy is doing. Huge, huge shout out to him, because we need more people doing that. This is why we do mutual aid. This is why. At the end of the day, it's up to us. So when people ask, how did it happen? We have a government that decided to get in bed with lobby interest groups and the military industrial complex and billionaires in Wall Street, and they decided to work for them instead of working for us. Meanwhile, we're still getting taxed. Something to think about. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents, and then we'll get to the next story. Hey, hey, hey. All right. Shout out to Roger for the super chat. Governor Hochul filling in the gap on SNAP. Oh, you put this twice. Governor Hochul filling in the gap on SNAP. That's good. Thank you, David. My girlfriend is impacted by the shutdown since she's considered an expert by the NIH. She's okay with it since it means no deadlines for her project. Interesting. Thank you, John. Do you think Jeffrey Jones and Kevin Spacey are in the Epstein files? Jeffrey Jones was the guy who played the principal in Ferris Bueller. He's a creep in real life. I think Jeffrey Jones died. Who knows? He could be. I don't know if he was a big enough name to be associated with that crowd. Kevin Spacey, I've been suspicious about for a long time, if you know what I'm saying. Preset Baltimore says we're definitely third world. Thank you, David. I recall a food line in Dallas that ran off highway exit in 2020. COVID related, obviously, but still not a good look for the richest nation. Nope. No, it is not. Shout out to Maxwell. Thank you for the super sticker. And thank you for this one, David. We got tax money going to Israel, Ukraine, Wall Street, military contractors, but we don't reap the benefits of our own money. Make it make sense. Yeah. That's a big part of it. David says the government prints money, but we're $37 trillion in debt. So do we really have the money? Well, modern monetary theory, which is MMT, tells you that the debt ceiling is a myth. I need to bring Steve Grumbine back on to talk about that a little bit more. Louise says, as a furloughed worker, if I need to get a job during the shutdown, I need to get approval from senior leadership to make sure there isn't a conflict. This is wild times. Thank you, B. I heard Trump has access to auxiliary funds for SNAP, but refuses to do so. Yes, you heard correctly. I'm telling you, they're punishing the working class people to push their agenda. Thank you, Blueser. Nick Cruz reminded us last night that in 2021, the Biden administration, the UN voted to make food a human right. 2 countries said no, America and Israel. We got to get into our communities fast. Appreciate RBN. There you go. Thank you, Dedication. How the fuck did we just give another country $40 billion? Thank you, James Green says, I think there's sunglasses and a shirt or something. And thank you, David. Check out shopping carts, but not lower prices. Exactly. And they got you working for free. Let's get the comment there from Roger Meadows. Thank you. Thank you so much for the tip, Roger. On Rockfin, Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul on Monday announced $30 million in emergency food assistance for New Yorkers as the federal government shutdown threatens to cut off SNAP benefits for nearly 3 million residents. While I've said repeatedly that no state can backfill these devastating cuts, I'm committed to ensuring New Yorkers do not go hungry this holiday season, and I'm taking action to support the families suffering the consequences of the Republican cruelty. Republicans in Congress voted to rip healthcare and vital services from millions of New Yorkers, and my administration and the people of New York will continue holding them accountable. Yeah, I hear her there. That's good that she's doing that. She also has an election coming up. Just FYI, people. Thank you for this one. Hoko, I hear you concerned about New Yorkers losing health care. Since you're seeing New York State, we'll have to pick up the slack. And since you are so concerned with New Yorkers losing health care, you know what else you can do? Put the New York Health Act in the 2026 budget. At least Stefanik, steadily closing that gap, might want to reconsider after you told us no on that Zoom. Ooh, when you were running in 2022. I lost a friend because of no New York Health Act. And thank you for the tip on Rockfin Rim Bro. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's crazy. Elise Stefanik is closing in on Kathy Hochul in New York. Crazy, crazy times. All right, ladies and gents, we are moving on to our next story. If you haven't done so, please smash the like button. And the theme again tonight is, how did this happen? And we need to ask that question about this one. Something happened to Matt Taibbi, journalist Matt Taibbi, who was very focused on getting to the truth, talking about censorship, corruption. He wrote books about this. All of a sudden, when it came to the Israel-Gaza issue, he decided to take a back seat. And I did question him about this on my show. I think it's been 2 years now since I asked him that question. I'll show you in just a second. I did question him about it. He didn't want to get into it. Since then, Matt Taibbi has gone out of his way on his Substack to viciously attack the left, but not so much attack the right. He has gone after the pro-Palestinian protesters because they said, Matt, why aren't you talking about people who lost their jobs because of censorship when it comes to Gaza? And now you see he's going after Zoran and this gentleman from Maine, the Nazi tattoo guy, Graham Plattner, right? So first, I want to say this before we get into the article here. I guess what he's trying to say is that there are people running as socialists or democratic socialists that came from wealth. Okay. But so did Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders maybe didn't come from wealth, but Bernie Sanders was a millionaire when Matt Taibbi was supporting him. And he didn't have a problem with it then. There's a such thing as class traitors. I felt like this was just another chance for him to go after the pro-Palestinian movement. Because remember, these are the pro-Palestinian people. Let's get into this piece here. The great leftist ignorant scam. The new movement in America is taking off mostly with the very wealthy, which isn't an accident. So let's get into that. He has the picture here of Zoran. Again, he's just, I'm noticing this trend with him. I almost died laughing when I read that Graham Plattner, the progressive warrior poet running for Senate in Maine, went to school at Hotchkiss, one of a handful of prep schools in the Northeast more precious and exclusive than my own Concord Academy. I'm familiar with Concord Academy. The original comic appeal of the Plattner story was in watching the legacy press mouthpieces who denounced Pete Hegseth Crusader Cross, peck tattoo, rally to defense the Plattner Nazi death head tat, which he got in Split, Croatia, while he was so wasted. That's been hilarious. But the Free Beacon story about the warrior poet with the accidental Nazi ink who went to a $75,000 high school describes a political scam of chef's kiss perfection. So I've seen people call out both, but some people did call out Pete and didn't call out Graham. But I just want to fast forward to the end of this article and then we'll come back up because there was a correction made here. An earlier version of this article incorrectly suggested Plattner graduated from Hotchkiss. So that's not even true. Let's go back up here. All right. Making sure I'm in the right part here. Yeah. He fooled even me. And I'm basically a Graham Plattner, a Northeasterner of means who went to high school with sons and daughters of rock stars and CIA chiefs, but also has a few oyster shucking scars. It would have never occurred to me to market myself as working class, but Plattner obviously doesn't suffer pangs of conscience on that score, describing himself in a launch video as a working class Mainer who can stand a post and chop his own goddamn firewood. So again, it said at the bottom of the article that he didn't graduate from Hotchkiss. So let's jump to the Mandami part here. Okay, here we go. Understanding the motives of terrorists is one thing. But the really concerning theme in Plattner's writing and the rhetoric of lefty superstar and New York mayor candidate Zoran Mandami zooms past trying to understand certain violent movements into something like sympathy for the underlying goals and mores. The ideas currently fashionable among upper class lefties are suicidal lunacies that will force actual working class Americans to vote against them out of self-preservation. What's depressing for me is that I know exactly how this happened. Only people who can afford the kinds of schools Plattner and I attended can afford to be as detached from reality as the new progressives have become. So again, he turns out he didn't graduate from that school. So let's fast forward here. He's talking about his own experience there. I'm trying to get to the Mandami part here. Here we go. In countries where the bulk of people have to be concerned with survival, getting enough to eat, not being conquered by rival nations or revolutionaries, and holding crime and corruption to tolerable levels, colleges don't teach kids that they're citizens of oppressor nations that should probably be disbanded. They certainly wouldn't do it if they lucked into the benefits of citizenship in a country like the United States. This country has problems, even serious ones. But it's not like gangsters are setting up freelance toll booths on I-95, or the strip steak you ordered at Ponderosa has a good chance of being cat meat. Citizens of countries that have known true suckage, including especially the ones with Marxist or Maoist histories, laugh at the things Americans call problems. The only people who think the system that produced the richest, safest empire in history is essentially unfixable are Americans wealthy, who have a current disdain for their own good fortune is like a political version of heroin chic. So there have been a number of people that fought good causes that were class traitors, like Che Guevara. Right? I mean, even if we look at the Black Panthers, if we look at someone like Huey Newton, he had a PhD. So there's always going to be class traitors. I think I meant chic. Did I say chick? Chic. Thanks, David. There's always going to be people who are class traitors, and I welcome them. I applaud those people, right? But this is something that happens in both parties, though. Didn't Donald Trump run around telling people that he was going to do all this for the working class and we're going to get back there and all that type of stuff? Didn't he grow up rich? This is what we have been noticing, what I've said before, what has happened to Matt Taibbi, where he's zoning in on the ones who it seems like tend to be the pro-Palestinian, either politicians or activists, etc. And the audacity for him to say, well, these people came from money, but they're out there trying to build some type of movement and they're way off course, when you as a journalist who said you were out to seek the truth, who called out censorship numerous times, wouldn't even call out people who you knew personally that lost their jobs because they spoke negatively about Israel. It goes on to say here, let me go ahead and bring this back up. This is what we're seeing now, and in particular with the Mandami campaign, which to a hilarious degree is manna from heaven for Trump. Zoran is the face of the new brand of socialism that embraces the preamble theme of the Communist Manifesto, in which all society is divided into oppressor and oppressed. Illegal immigration isn't a problem that needs to be contained in order to make social programming for citizens affordable, as Bernie Sanders once believed and perhaps still does. So this goes to show you how he's not doing the research like he used to anymore. When he says and perhaps still does, we just covered the story the other day about what Bernie said on Tim Dillon's show. Bernie Sanders still has his same position on immigration that he had 10 years ago. So he's not even doing the research now. Let's go on more here. But because immigration laws are inherently oppressive, so as Zoran now proposes, let's spend $165 million making New York the strongest sanctuary city in the country. Let's not fix police violence by ending stats-based enforcement or doing away with broken windows theory, but let's tweet things like queer liberation means defunding the police. Mondami says he no longer favors defunding, but be your own judge. On other subjects, here's how Sullivan sums up. Let's pause here. Where's the article about Andrew Cuomo? I mean, is it a coincidence that it just so happens that Andrew Cuomo is pro-Israel and that's why he's not coming after him? Or that he's part of the establishment? In 2022, he goes on to say, Mondami declared of his political career, for me, there's no point in doing this without DSA. DSA favor full amnesty of all illegal immigrants, abolition of the Senate, voting rights for non-citizens, and public ownership of major corporations. Since he won the nomination, he has softened on some of these points, but remains a DSA member and a fan. New Yorkers can decide if he's sincere. Bernie Sanders was also a member of DSA, who Matt Taibbi supported. Then there's Zoran Gambit, in which he decided to speak to the Muslims in New York, telling a story about an aunt who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab. I lived in New York for most of the 2000s and recall extraordinary levels of amity and cooperation between most of the city Muslim and non-Muslim residents. The numbers bear this out. Let me pause this. So because you didn't see this happen, it didn't happen. It's interesting in this article because Matt Taibbi refers to his own upbringing, his own, wealth and the groups and circles that he was a part of. But he still has that shielding him from other people's experiences. Let's go on. New York has always been a liberal city, welcoming to people from all over. One of the reasons its Muslim population has more than doubled since 9/11. For a likely future Muslim mayor of New York to even remotely imply that Muslims in New York were victims of 9/11 is an infuriating lunacy. Unfortunately, it fits in the aforementioned oppressor and oppressed mindset, in which a marginalized community always holds the moral high card over people who built your roads, bridges, and ports and put out your fires. So let me tell you what Matt Taibbi is actually doing here. He's basically trying to downplay what happened to Muslim people, even though Zoran talks about an experience. I know people who've had direct experiences, but because Matt Taibbi didn't see it, it didn't happen. I told you, be very wary of the people who are now like, oh, let's put all the focus on the Muslim people, because they're trying to turn your attention away from what Israel is doing. Matt Taibbi is in that club now. He's doing the same damn thing. Let's go after and attack. Let's go talk about, oh, he said this about his aunt and da-da-da-da. The same thing that right-wing accounts are doing to Zoran right now, Matt Taibbi put in this article. So I don't know who the fuck he working for. I don't know who got to Matt Taibbi. But this is not the Matt Taibbi that I once had a lot of respect for. Let's continue on. Once you see attendees of $75,000 boarding schools talking about the need to arm the proletariat, and a candidate for mayor for the world's financial center talking about perhaps toning down the rhetoric on seizing the means of production so that over time we can bring people to that issue, it's clear neo-Marxist idiocies have been allowed to gain a stronghold. Only people who don't know how hard it is to build a society think this way. But the number of such people is growing, ironically, because of the educational system. Let's continue on. The liberal left in this country used to be about searching for ways to moderate the excesses of capitalism, creating more opportunities for social mobility and promoting tolerance and generosity. Instead, we're in the upper class twits promoting revolution. We're in the upper class twits promoting revolution space, a script with which most of the rest of the world is sadly familiar. Is there no defense against the ignorant rich? And that's this article. That's this article. It's almost as if Matt Taibbi threw something together really quickly and said, okay, let me jump on this train to also smear Zoran. And like I told you, I'm not even a Zoran stan like that, but jumped on this train to smear someone who was a part of the pro-Palestinian movement. But he doesn't jump on this train to smear people who are part of the right. And he used to do both. And that's what's going on with Matt Taibbi. And that's what a lot of us in this space have noticed. And we've been calling it out. He rushed to put this together because he didn't even get some of the information is wrong. He had to put the star, the asterisk at the very bottom to say, whoops, he didn't graduate from Hotchkiss. That's how you know he rushed to put this out. Did Barry Weiss give you a phone call and say, your turn, go after him? Since he sends to find ways to defend the Zionist circle of friends that he now has, he didn't even look it up. He didn't even take the time to look up the research to see, oh, does Bernie have the same position on immigration? Hell, that just came out a couple days ago. Yes. He didn't even look it up. He rushed this out. So it's just weird to me that now all of a sudden, Matt Taibbi has a problem with people who come from wealth running in those circles of let's try to start a movement, when Matt Taibbi was one of the most vocal supporters of Bernie Sanders when Bernie Sanders was a millionaire. Some of us saw it back when, and I want to show you for those who did not see this. This was about, oh, I shared it before. Okay, this is when I shared it last time. So you'll see it again this time. Because I want you to see what he said to me. I think this was about a year ago. It was not too long after October 7th. This is when I knew something wasn't right. 1 year ago, when he was on the show, we were talking a lot about censorship. And everything was going cool until I brought up Gaza. Check this out. Gaza, as you know, the war in Gaza has been going on since October. I've talked about it a lot on this show. I'm sure you know Katie Halper has been covering this probably just about every live stream. She's really good on this issue. Same thing with the gray zone. I want to get your opinion about the war in Gaza. How do you feel about what's happening there? There was just a statement from the Pentagon released that they do not consider to be what's happening in Gaza genocide. I strongly disagree. But how do you feel about that? And where do you stand on this particular issue?
I'm probably generally in agreement with you. You know, Israel-Palestine is a story that I have never liked to comment on for a couple of reasons. I had some bad experiences trying to cover a couple of protests once upon a time that left a bad taste in my mouth. And the other thing is, it's a very, very complicated story with a lot of history, and I don't know anything about it. Like, I would love to just go there and learn more about what's happening rather than opine from a distance. Like Ukraine, I know a lot of that stuff. I lived in that part of the world for a long time. But this is an issue where I just don't like to get into. I found throughout my career that no matter what you say, unless you have it 100% nailed down, you get in trouble somewhere. And I just don't know enough about it to feel like I'm really an authority on it.
I also realized looking back at this that I do not have a poker face. I'm sorry. Oh my God, I do not have a poker face. You get in trouble about it with who? Zionists?
Anybody. I mean, I just, I don't feel like like I have an obligation to talk about things that I haven't covered. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are issues that I spend a lot of time on and comment on a lot because I've covered those issues. I've made phone calls on those issues. Like, I feel like I know what I'm talking about. And with Israel and Palestine, there are elements of that story that make me uncomfortable. And I just, you know, the world can go without my opinion on that matter, I think.
I think I disagree with that, Matt. I think genocide is a serious issue. I'll tell you, Glenn Greenwald told me one time, he said, no one is an expert at everything. Like he had warned me about this. He said, nobody is an expert at anything. I don't care how long you've been doing this. So, you know, what it taught me is that if there's an issue that I don't know much about or I don't feel comfortable covering, I reach out to people who are experts on that issue. I think it would mean a lot to, especially a lot of people watching, to hear, you know, how you feel about what's happening, because a lot of people do see you as a prominent voice in independent media, and they do value your work. And I don't think that you should have to be afraid of the pushback that you're going to get. Just look at people like Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal, for example. They get a lot of pushback. People smear them all the time, but that doesn't stop them from speaking the truth.
Right. I just can't stress enough. There are things about this story that make me nervous, and I feel like, you know, it's the first rule in medicine is do no harm. So if I don't say anything, I'm not doing any harm. You know, my job is to get stuff right and not get stuff wrong. So, you know, I understand that there are people who would like to hear from me in this issue, but I don't have a whole lot to add on this issue. I'd be regurgitating something that I got from somewhere else, and you know, I'm not a news service. I sort of disagree with that whole conception. Like, there are 2 or 3 things that I spend a lot of time on because I cover them over and over again. I'm constantly talking on the phone with people, and this issue just isn't one of them. I know that people feel like that's ducking, but that's the way it is.
Well, you're a parent, Matt, right? Like, so you're a dad. How do you feel about the children? How do you feel about the kids that have been killed in Gaza?
I mean, not good, but again, I don't want to talk about this whole thing. I just don't. I mean, it's not a news story that I would voluntarily talk about. Let's put it that way. If I went there and did a story, then that would be different. But right now, I just don't feel like I need to be in the middle of it. There are a lot of people talking about it already. You know, I just don't want to chime in.
That was when I realized something wasn't right. And after that interview, some people was like, "Oh, Sabs, just let it go. Just let it go." I'm like, "Nah, bruh, this doesn't feel right with me." Because I'm talking about someone who wrote a book about the corruption of Wall Street. You know, this went after like big, powerful people. There are a lot of us, particularly on the left, especially those in progressive spaces. Matt Taibbi used to co-host Useful Idiots with Katie Halper. And a lot of us had a lot of respect for Matt Taibbi's journalism. And what we have seen is that after October 7th, he has decided to go down a road where he focuses on one side, but not the other side. Throwing that article together, that crappy article that he threw together, where he didn't even get the information right about the school that Plattner graduated from, and didn't do the research about Bernie on immigration as of recent, just shows you that. He just threw that together. That's what I'm saying. Like, it was almost like a call went out. It was almost like, and I don't care, you ain't even got to like Zoran. I'm not a Zoran, even a Zoran stand like that. I'm just talking about the principle of the matter, what I have noticed. It was like a call went out and said, oh, Zoran Mondami said this about 9/11. And all these pundits that are against him or against those policies started putting out the tweets, the social media posts. And here comes Matt Taibbi dropping the article on Twitter. I've never seen someone fall like this. Like I've never, and I haven't been in this space for a long time, but I've been here since 2021 and I've never seen anyone fall like this. To me, it's something is happening. I don't know who got to him. I don't know what got to him, but the fact that he knows people that he has worked with who lost their jobs because they criticize Israel. And he was under this whole censorship, complex at that point in time. It was all about free speech and censorship and yada, yada, yada. And the moment people were fired because they were talking about Israel, oh, not going to talk about that censorship. It's a mess. We ask, like, how did this happen? With the Matt situation, I don't know. I don't know what prompted him down this road. But he is going out of his way. And that's the thing I noticed, going out of his way to go after the left in different ways and form. Even like just putting crappy articles together where he didn't even research the information. There are some that have fallen. And to this point, maybe one day, I don't know, maybe one day Matt Taibbi will wake up and be like, da-da-da, and have a change of heart or whatever. But what was weird to me is that even in that article, when he talked about people who the oppressed and the oppressor and all that type of thing, what people like Matt Taibbi have to come to understand, and this is something that I try to get across to even some of the Bernie supporters as well. Yes, class is an issue, but you also have to understand that in this country, Matt, not just countries abroad, in this country, Matt, there were harms that were done and harms that continue to happen to certain groups of people that extend beyond class. And there's nothing wrong with calling that out. In fact, you should call that out. So we all should have seen it coming when he got the Zionist friends, but I just, that collaboration with Barry Weiss, that was it. That did it right there. Right there. It's a shame. Damn shame. Like I said, where's the article about Andrew Cuomo and all his corruption? Because that's something Matt Taibbi loved to talk about, was corruption. Where's that article? Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. Thank you, David. Money is a made-up number to dictate who lords over who. Thank you. Eric, can we go to part 2 of Type VNC? Thank you, Echo Pup Music. Billions to fund Israel while Americans live in paycheck to paycheck and people can't afford food or health care. America is the third world country. Shout out to Echo Pup, who's been a member for 11 months. Thank you, Connie. Gavin Glitch, Scary, Mund, Control, IMO. I don't know what that means, but thank you. Thank you, New York Varsity. He went from do no harm, which at the time I agreed with, to what he is now. He picked a side to save his career, and now he has to deal. Thank you, William. A cowardly boy. Men will die on truth. And thank you for the super sticker, Claude Edwards. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okie doke. Let's get to the next story, ladies and gents. Okay. Really want to get into this here. So what finally happened, Tucker Carlson did interview Nick Fuentes. And, after calling him a Fed and all that kind of stuff. Some people say both of them are Feds. I don't know. But he did interview him. And there are a couple of parts I do want to touch on during this discussion. The first one, how Nick Fuentes got into, that space to begin with. This was shocking to me. I did not know how much Ben Shapiro was involved here. So let's go ahead and start with that. And then we're going to get to some of the things that he said about Israel as well.
I wrote a big article about this. I tweeted about it. I tweeted to Ben Shapiro. I said, I've never seen anything on the Daily Wire that's actually critical of Israel. And he quote tweets me. And at this time, I have 1,000 followers on Twitter.
How old are you?
I'm 18. I'm a freshman.
Still a freshman in college, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this is even before I started my show. And I don't know, I probably got 100 likes on this tweet. It wasn't a viral tweet. He quote tweets me and says, to accuse a Jew of dual loyalty is the surest sign of anti-Semitism. And this is how it sort of begins. And I see this tweet. And by the way, that was on Christmas Eve in 2016.
He immediately called you an anti-Semite.
Mm-hmm. So I'm driving to Christmas Eve Mass with my family. And I see on Twitter, the notification comes up, Ben Shapiro quote tweets me, calling me an anti-Semite. And I was like, what is this? Why is this guy attacking me? Because I don't have a platform at this time. I'm not an influential guy or anything. And so then I put out another tweet similar. I said something like, if you're China first, you should live in China. If you're Mexico first, you should live in Mexico. If you're Israel first, maybe you should go live in Israel. And again, he quote tweets me and says, you're an anti-Semite.
That same night?
This was, I think, a couple weeks later.
So in other words, it was Ben Shapiro that gave Nick Fuentes more attention by retweeting him and calling him anti-Semitic. That actually drew more eyes and attention to Nick Fuentes. Otherwise, that people may not have would have known of him. Let's continue.
Happened a little bit further down the line. And so...
Were you surprised that he knew you were?
Yeah, I was. I was surprised at why he cared.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, how does he even know who I am or what I'm about? And it turned out that Cassie Dillon, she had texted him earlier and she wanted him to take me under his wing. She texted him after that debate and said, you really like this guy. He's amazing. He did this great debate. She goes, but he's a little too pro-Trump. He's a little too Trumpy. And he goes, I'll take a look. And so I guess the two of them were kind of grooming me in a sense. They wanted me to go maybe and be a Daily Wire or maybe looking me as a potential conservative activist or influencer. And so they started paying attention to me. And the more critical of Israel I was, I started to get this really intense pushback from the both of them and from a lot of the people at Daily Wire.
Why do you think, so you're an 18-year-old college freshman, you're clearly talented and you're engaged, you're really interested, and you ask not crazy questions like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
And rather than explain it, they just call you a racist, call you an anti-Semite. That's the first response. That seems like the least effective, well, it turned out to be not very effective in your case, but that seems like the least effective thing you could do. Why do you think
they did that? So first of all, Tucker cracks me up sometimes because Tucker, I think you know the answer to this question. They do it because it works. It's a trick. It's an old trick that continues to work for whatever reason, although I think it's losing some of its steam, which is to smear people and to call them that because it works. They did it to Charles Barron when he ran against Hakeem Jeffries. They did it to Dr. Jill Stein. She's Jewish, by the way. They've done it to a number of people because they know it works. That's why they did it. But that part right there, I thought was pretty interesting, that it appears Ben Shapiro and them, I guess, were trying to get him over towards, the Daily Wire side of things, and it didn't work that way. All right. So let's get to the next part, because I thought this was pretty interesting. Now we get to the Israel conversation. One of the things I think that's been pretty interesting to me is that Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson alike, they say you shouldn't focus on identity politics. Let's not get into all that, right? but they still focus on identity politics. Like, it's just like, and that's what you're going to see. And it's like, more so, yeah, you don't focus on identity politics, but what Nick Fuentes is really telling you is not to focus on certain identities, right? Because he does focus on identity. I'm going to show you a flashback of when he sat down with Candace Owens, how he was the one who brings up identity. Let's get into this here.
Well, what about my views do you think are unreasonable if yours are reasonable?
I think, again, I don't think it's cucky. I think it's reality to say that guilt is not inherited. Blood guilt is bad. One of the reasons that I'm mad about Gaza is because the Israeli position is everyone who lives in Gaza is a terrorist because of how they were born, including the women and the children. That's not a Western view. That's an Eastern view. That's a non-Christian. That's totally incompatible with Christianity and Western civilization. They say, oh, we're the defenders of Western civilization. Not with that attitude. You're not. Collective punishment is the enemy of Western civilization.
Yeah.
And so I hate that attitude. It's genocidal. The current claims that I'm a cancer, from Ben Shapiro, whatever, we need to be excised from the body of conservatism is a genocidal position that it basically encourages violence, as they well know. The whole thing I hate.
Mm-hmm.
So like anytime you say a whole group of people is responsible for the sins of some of its members, like I'm out.
Yeah.
Nah, bruh. So here's the thing. It's interesting. Everyone has this clear conscience now all of a sudden, right? Tucker Carlson did that exact same behavior when he was a part of Fox News. Oh, yes, he did. There were different groups of people that he would choose to focus on from time to time. Now, Tucker Carlson, along with Rachel Maddow, they were able to argue in court that they weren't news, they were infotainment. But the reality is, he exactly did that. You did that. You chose to focus on groups and to make generalizations about these groups. Yes, you did. In fact, you had a whole career doing just that. But it's just funny, like now all of a sudden, oh, I have this epiphany. We can't generalize people. You generalized people for years on Fox. You did so. Yes. Yes. Now, Nick Fuentes says here that he agrees, right? But he also makes generalizations about groups of people, which you are going to see. Let's continue here.
But that's not my view.
It's not. Okay. So tell me your views. Like, rather than, you're one of those people, one of the reasons I wanted to meet you is you're one of those people who is defined by clips.
Yes.
And I'm one of those people also.
Yes.
Right? So I get it. So I'm going to just shut up and you tell me what you actually believe.
Yeah. Well, and listen, and I appreciate you saying that because that's just the reality of the media environment we're in. So I don't expect you to know all my views, but as far as the Jews are concerned, I think that, like I said, you cannot actually divorce Israel and the neocons and all of those things that you talk about from Jewishness, ethnicity, religion, identity. And let me give you like a perfect example. So you say on your show that we need to treat Israel like any other country. And I sort of understand that in principle because Israel is another foreign country.
Yeah.
But Israel is unlike every other country in the sense that because the Jewish people are in a diaspora all over the world, there are significant numbers of Jews in Europe, but also in the United States. And because of their unique heritage and story, which is that they're a stateless people, they're unassimilable, they resist assimilation for thousands of years. And I think that's a good thing. And now they have this territory in Israel. There's a deep religious affection for the state. It's bound up in their identity, the story of the Exodus from Egypt, the promise of the land, all these things. So let's say in the United States, for example, somebody like a Sheldon Adelson, he's not Israeli. Is he an ideological neocon? Does he believe in the promise of democratic globalism? I don't think necessarily. His heart is in Israel. And it's because he is a proud Jewish person. And
pause. This is the problem. Nick Fuentes is conflating Judaism with Zionism, right? And I'll show you a comparison in just a second. So you can't compare everybody to Sheldon Adelson. We have to remember when I went to cover the campus protests, a lot of the students who were out there protesting for Gaza were Jewish students. A lot of them, anti-Zionist Jewish students. When we went to the Boston pro-Palestinian protests, the ones in DC, a lot of the people who were out there were people who were anti-Zionist Jews. So this is the danger with the conflating the two. And I got to be very clear about this, ladies and gentlemen. There is a difference between Judaism and Zionism. I have had a number of people come onto this show over the years that have really broke this down, right? So he brings up the religion aspect. So let me get to that example, and then I'll come back to what Nick is saying here. Katie Halper, she came on. This was, I think, right after October 7th. Katie Halper came on and she explained this so well. Katie Halper is a great example to point to. You know why? Katie Halper she doesn't practice Judaism. So she's not religious, but she is ethnically Jewish. Listen to what Katie said here.
Again, like, I don't think Netanyahu is particularly religious, and a lot of the founders of Israel weren't religious. So I don't think it's a religious conflict. I think a lot of people who don't want to look at the historical material context want to pretend, oh, this is just a religious thing, and they've been fighting for thousands of years. And no, it's not that. And Jews and Muslims have coexisted in many instances. This is not about incompatible religions. This is about people being expelled from where they were. It's about ethnic cleansing, and it's about weaponizing what really was a tragedy and really was a horror, which is the Holocaust, and before that, the pogroms. What's so sad is that it weaponizes those things to ethnically cleanse other people. That's what's so upsetting. And I think what we're seeing are lots of Jews saying, not in my name, and our Jewish identity says, speak out against this. Never again is now. I went to a protest on Friday, arranged by Jewish Voice for Peace, and if not now. And it was really moving. And there were a bunch of Jews who were saying, never again is now, ceasefire now. They see this as part of their Jewish identity, speaking out, precisely because of what happened to their families.
So Katie Halper, number one, I am never wearing that sweater again. I didn't realize what it looked like on camera, and I'm never dyeing my hair that color again. Never, never, never. But Katie Halper is a good example to point to, right? Because Katie Halper, obviously, strong ally for the pro-Palestinian movement. She's Jewish, she's anti-Zionist, but she doesn't practice Judaism. So Nick Fuentes, and someone already pointed it out in the chat. I'll go back to it in just a second here. Nick Fuentes is conflating the two. And yes, FM said he's intentionally conflating the two. Right. Because then what happens is you have people making that generalization about all Jewish people, and that is not the case. Most of the Zionists, especially here in the United States, are Christian Zionists. So this is where a lot of this comes from, and it is important that we make that distinction. Now, let's go ahead and continue on here a little bit.
And I guess what I'm saying is that if you are a Jewish person in America, you're sort of, and again, it's not because they're born, but it's sort of a rational self-interest politically to say, I'm a minority. I'm a religious ethnic minority. This is not really my home. My ancestral home is in Israel. There's like a natural affinity that Jews have for Israel. And I would say on top of that, for the international Jewish community. They're extremely organized, and many of them are critical of Israel or Israel's current government or the project of Israel. But I guess what they have in common, unlike, let's say, like Singapore, for example, is that they have this international community across borders, extremely organized, that is putting the interests of themselves before the interests of their home country. And there's no other country that has a similar arrangement like that. No other country has a strong identity like that, this religious blood and soil conviction, this history of being in the diaspora, stateless, wandering, persecuted, and in particular, the historic animosity between the Jewish people and the Europeans.
So here's another problem, right? Israel is a secular state. Israel is not a religious state. It is secular, right? Two, there are Palestinian Jews in Israel as well. So this is a big part of the argument, which Tucker Carlson doesn't say this. He doesn't push back on him and say what I just told you, that Israel is not a religious state. When Nick Fuentes make these arguments, it gives people the impression who are not aware of the situation or not maybe as knowledgeable of the situation. It can give them the impression that Israel is a religious state, and it's not. Benjamin Netanyahu is not even religious. It's a secular state. Let's go on a little bit more here.
They hate the Romans because the Romans destroyed the temple. That's why Eric Weinstein goes to the Arch of Titus and gives it the finger and takes a picture. We don't think like that as Americans and white people. We don't think about the Roman Empire in 2,000 years ago. They do. And so I guess that's really, and I don't think that's me saying the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. I don't think that's me being hateful. I don't think that's me being collectivist. I think that's understanding that identity politics, whether you love it or hate it, whatever you feel about it, it's a reality that we live in a world of Jews and Christians, of whites and blacks. These identities mean something to us and they mean things to each other, and we can't sort of wish them away. And it feels like white people and Christians are the only ones that do that. There's no question.
So do everybody see what he is doing, right? So you got to be very careful. And I see a lot of people falling for this. What Nick Fuentes is doing is this whole idea of, oh, let's not focus on identity and let's just da-da-da. But he is focusing on identity. He just doesn't want you to focus on those identities that he's referring to. So that is something I've been pushing back on for quite some time. A number of them. It's not just Nick Fuentes, but all these people say, Ben Shapiro, don't talk about identity. No identity politics. Facts don't care about your feelings. Who spent a lot of time talking about identity? Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro. So people have to pay attention to the game that is being played here. This whole, no, we don't really want to get into identity or anything like that. But, so then he gets into identity. And I want to give you an example. When Nick Fuentes interviewed Candace Owens, right? Or when she interviewed him, excuse me. Watch who brings up the identity. Here we go.
Do you attend the mass?
I do.
Do you go every Sunday?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so you're like a committed Catholic. Then obviously, the perspectives on family. I mean, I personally, and this would be me lecturing, but I just feel like you really have no idea who you are until you start a family. And whether that means just marriage, some people who are struggling to have children, okay, fine. But there's such a growth that happens because of that I think it informs your beliefs in so many ways. And I think that was a huge turning point for me. Like, I wonder if I had been pressed with everything that happened last year, if I didn't have like the unshaken faith and my family, what would I have done? And sometimes when I see the things that you say, I do think, okay, he doesn't take into account family. Like, it's just Nick. Nick is in his own world, which can be, I think, a quite selfish perspective, which is fine. That's what you're saying. You like being selfish is another way to say what you just said. I like being selfish and I don't want to give of myself to somebody else. But
I also think
and I'll even say, I don't agree with what Candace is saying here. I don't think you have to be married or start a family to fully discover who you are as a person, right? But listen to the response.
There's something selfless involved, which is to say, I could go and start a family and drag them into a world of mine, which is pretty chaotic. I mean, is this really the kind of a lifestyle? If I'm banned on everything and I can't make a living, I'm banned from banking, I'm banned from credit card processing, I'm getting doxxed, people are showing up to my house trying to kill me, things like that. And what's more, I mean, let's also get, I also don't appreciate the lecture. You don't know me, so I know you're married. I know you're older than me, but you don't know me. You don't know my life. You don't know my situation. I don't think you're in a position to give me advice, especially as a woman, honestly. I don't think women, this is something in the right wing. We say we're anti-feminist, and then women go around telling men what to do. We're not.
So again, look who brings up identity, right? So does everybody see the game that Nick Fuentes plays? we'll take it back a little bit more here because I cut it off.
When we say we're anti-feminist, and then women go around telling men what to do, who are not their husbands. And, I don't really buy into that ideologically, but that's besides the point. My life has been tumultuous from the very beginning.
If you are...
So does everybody see that little game there? Like, he could have disagreed with what she said without bringing, oh, you're a woman. The people who keep saying don't talk about identity, keep talking about identity. Imagine that. So this is a big part of the game, right? So Nick Fuentes sits there right in front of Tucker Carlson. He conflates Judaism with Zionism. It's not the same thing. Zionism is a supremacist ideology. Zionism was created by Theodore Herzl. Theodore Herzl was not religious. So they're not the same. But to FM's point, he's doing that on purpose. Let's hear the part about weed. I think some of you appreciate this. Let's get into the part here about the weed.
It's interesting. Your audience, as I imagine it, I've never seen any of your numbers. I don't even know how big your audience is. It seems big to me, but I think of them as young men.
Mm-hmm.
That's the bulk of your audience, right?
Yes.
And yet here you are criticizing weed and video games and the internet, and you work on the internet. You are a creation. I mean, you wouldn't exist without the internet, of course. You didn't get a job at NBC News. So what kind of reaction do you get when you criticize weed, gaming, and the internet to young men?
A lot of them agree with it because they get it. It's their life. A lot of them, that's their life. Their life is, and another thing we didn't even bring up is the porn thing, which is there also. This is their life. Weed, gaming, porn. And I think they know it's bad. I think they know there's like some sense of guilt. And so it's interesting. I would say it's maybe an 80-20 split where 20% say, oh, you're against weed? Not cool, man. It's just a plant. Well, they're very defensive about these addictions. And I think 80% say, I know I have a problem. Like I have a guilty conscience. I know it's bad. I know it's terrible.
Why are you against weed?
Because I think that it's compromises the integrity of your mental faculties. I think there's something deeply wrong with that. When you, I'm against alcohol too. I think it's wrong to numb pain. I think pain is a part of life. I think
So I think he's referring to people who abuse it, right? So there's one word that's missing from all of this, and that's moderation, right? I don't smoke. It's not my thing. Tried it a couple times. I don't really appreciate having munchies. It's me. It's not my thing. I didn't like the way that it made me feel. But I do know people that do. And I know people that smoke, and they don't smoke every day. They might smoke every now and then, maybe on the weekend, or maybe like once a month, or maybe after an event or something like that. Moderation. Same thing with alcohol. You can have a drink, right? There's a difference between having a drink on a Friday night and having a drink every day. So the key thing there is moderation. And I'm very against like this all or nothing approach where it's like, you can't do any of that because if you do this, then you're going to end up like this and da-da-da-da. Remind me of that movie called Reefer Madness. Like back in the day, like people smoked weed and all of a sudden they got really like excited and anxious and crazy and all that from weed. Everyone I have seen smoke weed either got the munchies or was chill as hell. So that's the thing. It's like moderation, but this all or nothing approach. And this is what I said before when I was a part of the Pentecostal church. They had that same type of mindset, this all or nothing approach. You can't watch TV because it's the devil. Don't play video games because that's also the devil. Girls, don't wear pants because that means you're like a Jezebel from the Bible days. Don't wear jewelry or makeup because of that same reason. Is like they always take it there. So that's why, when I told you guys, I said I had to get up out of there, the people's crazy. That's why. That all or nothing approach. And there is a such thing as moderation, which they don't bring up. He doesn't bring it up, and Tucker Carlson doesn't bring it up.
Sobriety is like, should be experienced. And I think that weed is even worse because I think that, one, it's very dangerous. There's a lot of numbers now out of like California and Washington that
People are going to the hospital for psychosis. People
Yeah.
are going crazy because of
It's
it.
also more subtle and therefore more insidious. Like you can't, I've done it. If you have a, 12 pack for breakfast, like everyone knows. But if you take a hit of the dab pen, like nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use it all the time.
Yeah. And it makes you a loser. It makes you lazy. People that are addicted to weed are not motivated, don't care about anything other than weed. There's sort of like an irony there where I used to hang out with a lot of stoners in high school. I never smoked weed, but all my friends did. And they were so chill and relaxed and didn't care about anything. But if you criticized weed, they would freak out and get extremely defensive.
Yes, I've noticed.
Right? If you insinuate that it's addictive, if you say it's a problem, they get very like junkie behavior.
So again, I think there's a difference between someone that has an addiction and someone that is doing that in moderation. That's like, you can't make this assumption that like everybody that smokes weed is addicted to weed. That is not the case. Just like everyone that drinks alcohol isn't addicted to alcohol. So it's just, to me, it's just ridiculous. That all or nothing approach. You got to go all the way over there or it's nothing. It's just bizarre to me. It's wild. Weed is a plant. It's just like, so it's a plant. It's a plant. So, and that's one of the things that worries me, right? Is like, there are things that weed has been used for to help people. Yes, there is medical marijuana for a reason. And it's weird to me that that's not mentioned. Other ways that it's used. So it's just, the Fed behavior, right? Conflating Judaism with Zionism, saying that, and his fan club, like Nick's like cronies, his fan club and stuff like that, they'll go into people's shows and say, bring him on. It's so weird. It's so bizarre. But they finally had that conversation. And it's just hilarious to me because Tucker Carlson called him a Fed. But a lot of people are seeing this and they're like, they're both Feds. I understand, like, they're both Feds, right? So for me, I think that it is important that people don't conflate Judaism with Zionism. I think it's important to correct that. I don't agree with the things that he said about weed, and I don't even smoke weed, right? So I'm someone who doesn't even smoke it, and I can call these things out. There is a thing about moderation. And 3, it is interesting that as much as Ben Shapiro criticizes Nick Fuentes, it was him retweeting him that actually made people discover who he was in the first damn place. When you say, how did this happen? That's how it happened. It all goes back to Ben Shapiro. Everything goes back to the Daily Wire. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. We have one more story before Scott comes on. And I do want to get you guys' take about this one. It's a pretty short story. We should be able to cover this in about 10 minutes, I think. Let's jump into this one. So R&B singer Ashanti, right? Many of you may remember Ashanti back in the day. She had a lot of hits. I know she sampled a lot of songs. I totally understand that. But Ashanti was recently at a beach, just being her comfortable self. And someone sent this to me, and I have to tell you, I am floored by some of the comments. Very floored. So this is the photo that people are commenting on. Raindrops Media said Ashanti hit the beach in the Bahamas. And people saw this and they're like, what happened to her, right? So no, she doesn't look the same way that she did 20 years ago. Ashanti is older now. She just turned 45, which I'm going to show you here. She just celebrated her 45th birthday with Nelly, of course. But the point that the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because of this. Ashanti just had a baby. And what was weird is like, even people who knew that were making really nasty comments about the way that she looked underneath this picture. People made comments like, well, she's supposed to bounce back. Let me say something here. There's a big difference between having a baby in your 20s and having a baby in your 40s. She just turned 45 years old. When my best friend had her son, like when we were in our 20s, when she had her son, like in our 20s, and she was like, I think she was like 25, 26 around that time, her body bounced back just like that. Just like that. She didn't even go to the gym, but her stomach just kind of bounced back and it was like, whoa, you know, she was 20, 25, 26 years old. When you have a baby in your 40s, you are dealing with a couple of things. The first big one is your metabolism is slower. It has slowed down. So the days of just bouncing back like that, when you're in your 40s, it don't really work like that. And I'll tell you another little secret. For the celebrity women that you see having those babies in their 40s and even some in their 50s, and you're like, whoa, look, they bounced back just like that. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. They had cosmetic procedures. It's a little known thing in Hollywood, a little known thing where a lot of these women that are celebrities that have those babies in their 40s, especially late 40s or early 50s, yes, they do have cosmetic procedures and they have access to some of the top-notch plastic surgeons in the world. They're out there near Beverly Hills. There are plastic surgeons nowadays that can do a nip tuck here and there and make it look more natural. So you don't know that they had plastic surgery, but they did. And they kind of keep it a little secret, right? But it just floored my mind that people were so angry and calling her names. I'll show you some of the comments at someone who just had a baby. And Ashanti, in the other term, and what I understand, I think she may want to have another baby. But the thing is like she's walking around freely, being comfortable in the skin that she is in. And I gotta say this: there is a lot of pressure sometimes on women to just bounce back like that very quickly. There were multiple pictures. There were other ones as well. There was ones with her kids, which she did not approve of. And I'm not going to show the one with her holding her kid because she was like, I didn't authorize someone to take a picture of my kid and post that publicly. Yeah, people in the chat are saying she looks great. She looks great. Yeah. And so people are making comparisons because they're looking at, let me show you the old ones. Again, people got to remember 20 years ago. So this was Ashanti and Nelly in 2005. And this is them in 2025. Again, no baby, baby. In your 20s, in your 40s. People get older and your bodies change. But some of the comments that I saw, like, where's the first one? We'll come back to that one. This one, Bobby said she looks like she doesn't bathe. Here's another one. Durkee said she blew up. I mean, you know? So your body changes. And I was like surprised, like this one, Future Gitmo Guard, damn fat as hell. Yeah, see, Alyssa knows. It's pretty common for the upper class to get a tummy tuck after pregnancy and they get liposuction when needed. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And some of them is like routine, you know? So that's the thing. And I want to put up this article here because they said something here. And I think women need to hear this. Ashanti doesn't owe you a snatch postpartum body. the cruel obsession with women's bounce back bodies, right? And I feel the same way. I'm like, leave this woman alone. Like, what the hell is wrong with people, right? Case in point, the internet's recent meltdown over photos of Ashanti on the beach with her 1-year-old son, KK. TMZ caught her doing what new mothers deserve to do, living, laughing, and loving her baby in peace. But instead of the celebration, she was greeted with shade and cruelty. Social media lit up with body-shaming comments, criticizing her figure as if postpartum body was some public disappointment. And there can be that pressure. Let's be clear. Ashanti has always been fine, and a little postpartum weight cannot change that. She looks radiant, healthy, and at peace. She's glowing in the joy of fullness of motherhood. It's given Mamma Mia. But society is still obsessed with the snapback culture and the weird idea that women should give birth on Monday and look red carpet ready by Friday. After giving birth, Ashanti made a post that summed up her feelings about her body. This is what postpartum looks like. I am so proud of my body for giving me my baby, baby, baby. Play on her song there. Shout out to her for not hiding until she was camera ready based on standards. And it goes back to the picture there at the beach. Ashanti herself spoke in an interview with Hello Beautiful in July. It was a lot, going through a lot of firsts in front of so many people, becoming newlyweds, getting married, having a child, and a postpartum body. It's like to be in a bikini on an island. You know what I mean? After having a baby, you go through those things as a woman. And I just feel like I wanted to inspire women that it's okay. You don't have to snap back the minute you step out of the hospital room. And I say give applause to Ashanti here, right? Because I remember when Kate Middleton had her baby. What is she, Duchess? Is she Duchess Kate now? When she had her baby, I remember the media, when they talked about it, they said, oh, look at her. She's already up and walking around just after giving birth. She bounced back so quickly. And it seemed like that's what all the focus was on. And it's just sad. And I think, you can kind of get away with it a little bit more, I think, if you're not famous, but because Ashanti is famous, your body there's a lot of attention on your body. There's a lot of attention on what you look like. And for me, it was just, I don't know. And it made me wonder, did my friends, did they have that same type of pressure? Did they feel like they had to lose the weight, that they had to bounce back so quickly? And I think if anyone is watching, if you've had a baby in your 20s or 30s and you had one in your 40s, women will tell you there is a big difference. I think even the recovery time might be different, right? So I just hope that we can move forward with just embracing people as they are and not trying to shame people, right? I think that's what we need to do moving forward, as a society. So if you see her, give her a hug, give her a hug, give her big props. It is what it is. All right. Oh, I think Scott's early. All right. All right, guys. Scott Ritter is here. Eric, can we go to the part 3 of Type VNC, and I'll go ahead and bring Scott on. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've seen him here before. My special guest is Scott Ritter, former U.S. Marine and Special Weapons Inspector. Let's bring him back in. What's going on, Scott?
Hey, Sabby, thought it'd be on time tonight. That would be different, wouldn't it?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So we have quite a bit to get into, right? Because there was an announcement that was made from Benjamin Netanyahu earlier today. I want to go ahead and show the clip of that. This is in regards to Gaza.
We have breaking news. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is ordering powerful new strikes on Gaza. This comes just 2 weeks after Hamas released the remaining living hostages as part of a ceasefire agreement. But tensions over the delayed return of dead hostages remains have escalated ever since. ABC's Patrick Reevell and ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy are here with more on this. Patrick, what's the latest?
Hi, Dan. Yeah, as you say, just in the last few minutes, Israel's Prime Minister's office says that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered immediate and powerful strikes on the Gaza Strip. It follows a meeting that he had called to discuss growing frustration from Israel over what it believes are repeated violations.
And we can't show the strikes here, but basically, to make a long story short, Benjamin Netanyahu has come forward and they are saying that of course that Hamas has violated the ceasefire and that Hamas killed IDF soldiers, and he is using that as a basis to instruct the IDF to go in with full force attacks on Gaza. Scott, what's your take on this?
Well, I mean, Netanyahu has always been the weak link in well, I guess what we're calling the peace plan, the Trump peace plan. You know, the Israelis aren't serious about peace. They don't want peace. They wanted their hostages back. And that was clear. Ben Gvir, I guess the Minister of Interior, said, now that we got them back, let's go in and finish the job. So they were never serious about this. The total package, and so now the question is Trump serious about this? This is the true test for Donald Trump. Is he going to, hold Netanyahu accountable for what is going to be a blatant violation of this ceasefire? Or is he just going to acknowledge that this was all a game, and that there was never going to be peace? We'll find out. J.D. Vance, the vice president, seems to believe that this is a blip that can be overcome. Explain that to the mothers of the dead Palestinian children, who've already, died because of Netanyahu's actions. This is, peace with Israel is a mission impossible. They don't want peace. They don't want a Palestinian state. They don't want peaceful coexistence. Netanyahu can't have peace because if there is peace, then he will quickly find that his coalition is not sustainable and that he will be pushed out of office and arrested and put in jail for corruption. So he needs war, the forever war. And again, it comes down to American leadership. What is the United States going to do? And the fact that Donald Trump has surrounded himself with probably the most pro-Zionist cabinet imaginable, I can't see, the United States putting significant pressure on Netanyahu.
Yeah. Another thing I noticed too, we haven't seen any evidence, any proof that Hamas has violated the ceasefire, right? But we do know that it appears to be gangs now in Gaza, which from what I understand are basically pro-Israel gangs. Some of them may have a part of ISIS faction there as well. I feel like Israel brought them in to cause this disruptance in Gaza so that they have an excuse to go back in and attack again.
It's the Israeli plan. I don't know about the excuse to go back and attack again, but Israel wants Hamas finished. Israel's demands have been from the very beginning that Hamas not only disarm but disband, and that the members of Hamas aren't even supposed to be allowed to stay in Gaza. Later, that was softened that they could accept some sort of amnesty that would allow them to live, but never be a part of the government. The Shin Bet, Israel's security services, has for some time now been trying to recruit Palestinians sympathetic to the Israeli cause from within the ranks of the Gazan Palestinians. They target specific families that have economic relationships with Israel. If you remember, before October 7th, 2023, the Israelis had made a big deal about opening up the gates and letting more Palestinians out of Gaza to gain employment in Israel, to generate income. And Israel doesn't do anything to be nice. Everything Israel does has a security aspect to it. And this was a vehicle to recruit Palestinians, to identify Palestinians sympathetic to the Israeli cause, to use money as a lure. And Israel has, even during the this difficult fighting that was taking place in Gaza recently, Israel has recruited families to rise up. And you've seen reports about this in the Western media. These brave Palestinians have said no more to Hamas, as if they woke up with a moral compass. What actually happened is Israel bought them off. And so when the ceasefire happened, Hamas went out and started eliminating these traitors to the Palestinian cause. And the Israelis can't have that. The United States, first Donald Trump, I guess, didn't understand what was going on because when he was confronted by this, so he said, no, I think I've allowed Hamas to keep their weapons because they need a police force. And there's some bad people out there that need to be taken care of. But then the Israelis came and said, hey, you're off script, Donnie. Those bad people you're talking about are our people, and we need them to get rid of Hamas. We need Hamas to be disarmed so these people can come in and kill them all. And so Hamas has been fighting these pro-Israeli elements inside Gaza, and this is what has angered Netanyahu and the Israelis, and has prompted the action we're seeing now.
This is just it's crazy to think that, number one, this has been going on as long as it has, but then also this idea of this real estate venture that Jared Kushner and Elon Musk and Donald Trump and they all want to accomplish there along that Gaza Strip. It just, to me, it's so obvious that that is something that was planned before October 7th, that real estate venture that Jared Kushner wants to do. So I guess all what I'm trying to say is, like, they've been planning to take the land. So like, think about it this way. Let's say Donald Trump didn't become president in 2024. Does that stop the business deal that he had with Elon and all of them in Gaza?
No. They're the Netanyahu government has made it clear that there will not be a Palestinian state, and a Gaza that is under the control of the Palestinians creates the most viable pathway to a Palestinian state. And so the goal has always been for the Israeli hardliners to take over Gaza, to eliminate Hamas. And there's been talk about bringing back the settlements. I forget what was the year 2005 when the Israelis, under pressure from the United States, dismantled the Gaza settlements. And since that time, the hardliners have said, no, we have to get those settlements back. And so, they've been talking about getting the settlements back. And as soon as you get the settlement, it's like the camel's nose under the tent. The second you let the camel's nose under the tent, if you let it stay, the whole camel's coming in the tent. In Israeli settlements in Gaza is the same thing. It just means that you're creating a pathway for Israel to take over Gaza as part of historic Judea, I guess, part of the greater Israel. So this has always been a plan, and Jared Kushner has always been a schemer in this way. I mean, I don't know the guy. I've never met him. I don't really want to meet him. But what a despicable human being. I mean, I'm just being frank and honest here. What a despicable human being who puts money before everything else. He's not smart. I mean, he's not stupid, but he's not this genius, this geopolitical genius. He's a spoiled boy who had been given everything to him, who probably has committed massive economic crimes. I mean, his relationship with the Saudis should be investigated. It won't be, because Trump now has this iron grip on the Department of Justice and the FBI. But the fact that Jared Kushner got these sweetheart deals with the Saudis, where he did nothing but received hundreds of millions of dollars in profits, should be investigated, but it won't be investigated. Now he's sitting here cutting deals with the Israelis to, transform Gaza into prime real estate, which I would imagine Jared Kushner's various companies would profit greatly from. What a despicable, disgusting human being.
Yeah. Absolutely. Another part, you mentioned JD Vance there. Recently, JD Vance was in Israel, and he said he was questioned by a reporter that the ceasefire had been broken, and he was just kind of like, "Oh, really?" Like he didn't really, you know what I mean? Like he just kind of like just shrugged it off a little bit. And later on, it was reported that he was, I guess, somewhat embarrassed. Also, that Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud party voted to annex the West Bank while he was there, so it made him look foolish. What do you think this says about like JD Vance, for example? Because like even though people say Trump's going to run for third term, I don't think Trump is actually going to do that. But JD Vance will probably be next in line. What does that tell people about him?
It doesn't look good for JD Vance. He was supposed to be sort of the MAGA moral compass for Donald Trump. The man, because Donald Trump, I don't care if Donald Trump thinks he's running for a third term, constitutionally he can't. And the last time I checked, Congress hasn't totally resigned and withdrawn from the battlefield. The Constitution still is in effect, even though the Supreme Court appears to be dominated by pro-Trump people. I don't even think this Supreme Court can say, yeah, let's let him run for a third time. Plus the man's just old and his brain is not all there. All the criticism we had of Joe Biden, the deterioration of Joe Biden. I'm fairly certain we're probably going to be seeing this in the coming years as Trump brain drifts off to la la land. So JD Vance is supposed to be the backup, the guy that's there backing him up. When Donald Trump gets tired, JD steps in and says, "I'm here. I'm in the room with you, boss. I'm following your policies." And, we saw that early on. They used him, in Russia. They used him in Europe. And it looked like, JD Vance was going to be successfully fulfilling the role that he was, designed to play. I think, though, on the Middle East in such, JD Vance, and I would imagine even in Venezuela, I would imagine in Iran policy, JD Vance was starting to say, hey, this isn't really what we signed up for, is it, boss? We're not supposed to be doing this. We're not supposed to. And then you see him get pushed aside, and then he becomes more and more of this figurehead. He's no longer a participant. He's pushed aside, and the pliant loyalists are brought in. And I think that's what we have right now. JD Vance is just this, this puppet that's moved around, this plush toy that's moved around and said, hey, okay, smile here and go here and smile. And he went to Israel and he's supposed to smile. He's humiliated. Yep. And that's what Netanyahu does. And if the United States, was a real nation and not a fake nation that's totally subordinated itself to Israel, this would never have lasted. I mean, my God, the first thing Donald Trump should have done is called up Benjamin Netanyahu and said, what part of American military aid don't you understand? You get the Knesset to back down. That's your job. And if you can't get the Knesset back down, dissolve the Knesset, dissolve your government, do whatever it takes, but you are not annexing the West Bank on my watch. Do you understand that, Bibi? Instead, they're like, Netanyahu's like, oh, it's just a little, legislative maneuvering. It's not really a big deal. And Trump was like, yeah, okay. I mean, look, this is Donald Trump, who literally called out Miriam Adelson on, you saw that, where he said, I asked her, is she more American or Israeli? And she wouldn't answer the question. I think she did answer the question, Donald. She's Israeli, 100%. And that to be the case. And yet you took $100 million from a lady who identifies more as an Israeli than an American, and you seem to be good with that. No, the Trump administration has been totally compromised by Israel from top to bottom.
That brings me to Russia and Ukraine, because it's so much that's happening. It's not just Israel and Gaza; it's Russia and Ukraine. We'll get to Venezuela later, but the situation with Russia and Ukraine, it seems that there's no end in sight here. And then
there's an end. Russia's winning. I don't know why people don't understand this. Not only is Russia winning, Russia's going to win. And there's nothing anybody can do to stop them. And Putin finally The Russians finally called Trump out on it, because normally it's Trump saying, Vladimir Putin's not doing what I want him to do. We can't have a meeting with the Russians until the Russians are willing to accept the terms. And the Russians finally came back and said, no, Donnie, we can't have a meeting with you until you're ready to accept our reality, because our reality is the only one that counts. Vladimir Putin gave a press conference. Kupiansk, 5,000 Ukrainians surrounded. Pokrovsk, 5,500 Ukrainians surrounded. The report, there's 5 more cauldrons building up, where anywhere from 1,000 to another, several thousand. There's equivalent of the potential of 50,000 Ukrainian soldiers being surrounded by the Russians in the coming months. This battlefield is evolving in ways that the Russians have been building up for. This is what collapse looks like. The Ukrainians are in an absolute panic. Everybody's in a panic, and the Russians are just tired of playing games. They said, we can bring a war to an end, but you have to accept battlefield reality. We prefer you accept it up front, but if you want us to prove it on the battlefield, we will. And that's what they're doing right now. And they're slaughtering the Ukrainians. It's just an absolute bloodbath. And the Russians aren't about to back down. It's tough for the American audience, because what's happening right now, Sabby, is there is a British-run information warfare operation taking place called Keep Ukraine in the Fight. I don't know if you've been looking at your X feed, or I don't know what social medias you're on, but have you seen that the domination of stories out there about how Ukraine is striking Russian oil targets and the sanctions, and Putin's in a panic, and you see the Telegraph, Putin's in a panic for this, this, that, and the other thing? It's all fiction. Putin's not in a panic. There's never been a president more relaxed than Vladimir Putin right now. Are there problems for Russia? Sure. It's a war. But Russia's handling it. All this stuff. India and China have stopped buying Russian oil. The Russian economy is going to hell. Actually, the Indians are buying Russian oil, and the Chinese are buying Russian oil, and everybody's buying Russian oil. Is there going to be a little bit of a pinch? Yeah, but if you know something about the energy security economy, what happens when there's a pinch, Sabby? 2 + 2 = 4. The price of oil goes up. And so you create a situation where Russia can't sell as much oil. They drop a couple 100,000 barrels, but the price of oil goes up. So it's a wash. It doesn't impact the Russians at all. This is the reality. Europe's economy is collapsing as we speak. The German economy is an absolute free fall. France is a basket case. England, a joke. The Ukrainians can't survive without $120 billion of infusion of European and American taxpayer money. They have no functioning economy at all. And yet we're supposed to believe all the crap all the stuff out there about the imminent collapse of Russia. No, I just was in Russia. I just came back about a week ago. I'm here to tell you right now, it's a nation at war. People are dying. I need to be careful here, not to come off as too glib. Russians are dying. It's a hard-fought war. The economy isn't functioning. But again, I just want to point out to people, what's the growth rate of the American economy last year? 1.6%. 1.6%. You know what the growth rate of the Russian economy is under sanctions? 4%. Ooh.
Wow.
Guys, you understand that the Russian economy is growing at a rate twice as fast as the American economy? Now, the American economy is big and bigger, but the Russian economy is doing okay. Could it be better? Yeah, lift sanctions and watch it thrive. But the Russian economy has been fine-tuned over 4 years of sanctions. They know which way is up. People belittle the Russians. What was it John McCain liked to say? It's just a gas station with nuclear weapons. Well, gee, guys, who do you think understands the business of big gas stations better than a gas station? So when we're going to talk about global energy security in the energy markets, do you think maybe the Russians know the global energy market better than just about it? Ask the Saudis. Every time the Saudis tried to put a squeeze on the Russians, tried to take away market share, etc., Russia turned around and slapped them down. And it was always the Saudis that backed off. Want to know why? Because Russian oil is about the cheapest oil in the world to pull out of the ground. So when you have prices at $60 a barrel, and it costs the Russians $8 to pull it out of the ground, their profit margin's a little bit bigger. In the United States, where it costs us, $40 to pull out of the ground, even more, we're only making $20 a barrel. So our profit margins on it. The same thing with the Saudis. The Russians will always win. Though they can discount their oil more than anybody else. And at the end of the day, the world needs energy, and buying oil is expensive business. People will buy discounted oil, and Russia could discount their oil better than anybody out there. The Russians have Scott Bessent is an idiot, a straight up moronic idiot. And I know I've just insulted everybody who, never mind, it was a bad joke, but calling Scott an idiot is an insult to idiots. The man truly doesn't know what he's doing, but this is typical of Trump. He's surrounded himself with these sycophantic, billionaires whose sole focus is money, 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 and they don't care about reality. There are things happening. Look at Argentina. We poured $40 billion into propping up Milei down there, who has a failing economy. Why did we do that? Because we like him? Well, yeah, Trump, but no. We did it because Scott Bessent's business partner had over invested into the peso, and the peso was crashing, and this hedge fund manager was going to lose everything. And he picked up the phone and he called Scott Bessent. He said, "Bail me out, boss." So we just went in with $20 billion of U.S. taxpayer money, and we bailed out the Argentinian peso in the short term so Bessent's pal could pull out of it. It's happening in broad daylight in front of everybody. We put Martha Stewart in prison for insider trading, the very thing that Congress does every day to stay viable. You saw the senator. We can't get away with insider trading because if you do that, nobody will want to be in Congress. Wow. So you admitted it, that the only reason why people join Congress is A, to help Israel, and B, to become millionaires. This is why, we see all these people that make $56,000 running his, I'm part of the American people. I'm one of you. In 2 years, I've got $5 million in the bank. I don't know how that happened, but somehow I was able to turn my measly $117,000 salary into $5 million. I don't know. It just happened. I got lucky, I guess. They're all corrupt. It's just right there. This administration is singularly the most corrupt administration that's ever been, because they're doing it right in our face. Scott Bessent bailed out his billionaire hedge fund manager by putting $40 billion of U.S. taxpayer money into Argentina. How did Argentina repay us? By immediately selling China soybeans at a time when the American soybean farmer is being screwed because of Trump's policy to China. Guys, it's right there in our face, and we're just letting it happen.
And it's a lot of corruption, right? Because I always tell people to follow the money. Like if people ask, like, okay, why is the US so invested in this war with Russia and Ukraine? Because it's basically a proxy war for the United States. People ask, why are we so invested there, right? You mentioned Russia's economy that is growing like 4% with sanctions on them. Like it's insane. It's I would say the same reason why the US wants to stop China. Right. So there's a lot of growth that's happening in other countries across the world, and the US government wants the US to remain this superpower. But things are changing, and other countries are growing in areas where we're not growing here. Our infrastructure is a mess. Like you could tell people probably about the subways in Russia and in Moscow or something. But our infrastructure here is a mess.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of unfair because you're picking on Russia's great strength. I mean, the Moscow metro system is a marvel, really a marvel, especially the old, the stuff built during the time of Stalin. And it's not just an architectural feat or an engineering feat. They're work of art. I mean, they literally are literal works of art. I actually spent a day on this last trip, just going around the metro to the different old stations and looking at them. I mean, the mosaics, the bronze statues. There's a whole series and I forget the particular station, but I own dogs. There's my dog right behind me right there. And so I went to the one where you pet the border dog, and it's all shiny. And then you go down, there's different parts on the statue that people pet. They just walk by. You just watch them. They're not walking by like tourists. These are casual people going to work, and as they walk by, they just reach out and they pet it for good luck. It's just an amazing thing. Then you come to the United States and go to New York City, and it's disgusting. Disgusting. New York City is disgusting. The subway system is disgusting. You land in Russian airports, clean, efficient. You land in JFK, chaos. Getting in and out of JFK is again disgusting. It's less than third world. The infrastructure we have. You go to China. I haven't been to China, but George Galloway, you know who he is, George. He and his wife just went to China to visit, and he's sending photographs and just like, oh my God, and we're talking about China, servicing cities of 20 million people, and with infrastructure that's just world class, fast trains that are fast, not like the Acela, the Amtrak train, the Acela. You pay your extra money, you go from New York City to Washington D.C. on the Acela. But when you get down to South Philly, you got to slow down to about 5 miles an hour because the train will be flipped off the track if it goes any faster than that. And God forbid you get caught walking down the train as you're trying to go to the cafe car, because you're going to be banged back and forth, bouncing into people because the tracks. Yeah, that's the Acela. That's America's fast train.
I was going to say I've been on the Acela before, so I know what you're talking about when you get to South Philly.
Get to South Philly, you're just booming around, baby, because the tracks suck. And, where's our pride as a nation? Where's our pride as a nation? I mean, this is humiliating at a time when, and we're falling for it. I mean, tariffs. I don't know how many times I have to hear the MAGA crowd. We're bringing in more money for tariffs than ever before. We're going to send everybody out a $2,000 check. Oh, gee, thanks. Well, for making so much money off of tariffs, why did our debt go from 36 to 38 trillion? If we're bringing in 400 billion in tariffs, and yet our debt went up by 2 trillion, that's like me bringing out the credit card at Christmas time and going out and buying lottery tickets and saying, look, everybody, I bought you lottery because I'm doing so well, but I paid for it out of a credit card that I can't afford to pay the minimum set on. So I'm just deeper and deeper in debt. America's economy is broke, straight up broke. And yet this buffoon is running around trying to convince everybody that everything's working. And now we're going to get involved in a $1 trillion war in Venezuela that we're going to lose. Oh, we'll get rid of Maduro. There's no doubt about that. We will get rid of Maduro, but we will not win this war. And all that oil that's under. One thing, again, you learn about the oil industry I've been working in the energy security field for about 20 years. Stability is the big thing. Oil companies love stability because you're investing a whole bunch of money into a long-term project. So you want to put down $5, $6, $10 billion to pull oil out of the ground for 20 to 30 years so that you can make, windfall profits, but you need stability. If there's fighting on the ground, if pipelines are going boom, if oil derricks are going boom, if oil executives are being kidnapped and murdered, you're not doing well. The oil business doesn't do it. Venezuela, if we do what Trump is claiming he's going to do, the Venezuelan oil economy is going to disappear. We're not going to get it. And then that's going to create havoc on the global energy security market. And then South America is going to go up, and this war against the cartels is a suicidal venture. We're blowing up fishing boats. Maybe some of those fishing boats have drugs in them. Maybe. We don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But that's not defeating the cartels, because people are still snorting cocaine here in America. And that's coming from South America. People are still shooting their veins with heroin. That's coming from someplace. The reality about the war on drugs is that until you cut the demand, there will always be supply. There will always be supply. So the idea that we're making a dent in any of this is absurd in the extreme. This is just Marco Rubio's fantasy. He's been wanting to do this war against Maduro since 2016. And Miriam Adelson made, the Israeli lady. She's not American. Let's just be honest about this. She's Israeli. And she paid Donald Trump $100 million to put Marco Rubio in his cabinet. He was supposed to be the vice president, but even that was too much of a stench for Donald Trump. Couldn't handle that because he knows the truth. Marco Rubio hates Donald Trump. Hates him with a passion. You guys remember the 2016 election cycle, don't you?
Little Marco.
Little Marco. Marco said Donald Trump's the dumbest man, the most vile human being in the world. That hasn't changed. They despise each other. But Marco Rubio has been given free reign in Latin America.
Yep.
And so this little Cuban dictator that we have, a wannabe president, is now going to go to war in Venezuela and against Colombia as well, because you're not going to go to war in Venezuela without going to war in Colombia. And it's going to destabilize everything, including Brazil. Did you see the reports coming out of Rio de Janeiro today about the de facto state of war that exists in the streets in the Brazilian, in this large Brazilian city? We are going to turn Latin America. And then guess what happened when you have tens of millions of people displaced because of war? Where do they head? Do they head south or do they head north? They head north to Gringo land. And we're going to be flooded with refugees again. Donald Trump is literally one of the least qualified people in the world to be president of the United States. I mean, and it's plain out. And where is Congress? Where is the Supreme Court? Where are the American people? I mean, are we really this stupid? And that's a rhetorical question, because the answer is, with few exceptions, yes, we are.
Well, speaking of Congress and speaking of Venezuela, I want you to see what Lindsey Graham said, because he just says the quiet part out in the open. You guys have got to hear this about Venezuela.
We didn't have a declaration to go into Panama. Bush 41 went into Panama to replace the leadership there because the Panamanian leadership were working with drug cartels to threaten our country. Reagan didn't have a declaration of war, congressional authorization to deal with Cuban influence. So this idea of Rand Paul, I just fundamentally disagree with. To the other senators, you deserve more information and you're going to get more information. But there is no requirement for Congress to declare war before the commander-in-chief can use force. Panama and Grenada are two examples in our backyard where Republican presidents chose to go after countries and leaders that were threatening our people.
So he makes it very clear here, Scott, that that's what they want to do. They want to overthrow a Maduro, and she comes back and asks about war crimes. I thought this was pretty good.
But there seem to be a number of issues wound up in here. I know you personally used to serve as a judge advocate in the Air Force. We looked at the JAG manual. Preventative self-defense employed to counter non-imminent threats is illegal under international law. So if we are not at war and these suspected criminals pose no threat of imminent violence, isn't this potentially a war crime to be killing the people on these boats and then to be taking out a leader?
No, not at all. I don't know what manual you're referring to, but I know what President Bush 41 did. He took down Ortega, the leader of Panama, because he was involved in drug trafficking, threatening our country. Venezuela is now partnering with Hezbollah. Hezbollah is running out of money because Iran is weak.
That's not new.
Partnering with drug cartels in Venezuela. No, it should have stopped. Here's what's new. You got a commander-in-chief that's not going to put up with this crap. We're not going to sit on the sidelines and watch boats full of drugs come to our country. We're going to blow them up and kill the people that want to poison America. And we're now going to expand operations, I think, to the land. So please be clear about what I'm saying today. President Donald Trump sees Venezuela and Colombia as direct threats to our country because they house narco-terrorist organizations. The leader of Venezuela is an indicted drug dealer in American courts. So, yeah, the game is changing when it comes to drug traffickers and drug cartels. We're going to use military force like we have in the past to protect our country. That's the new game we're playing, and I'm glad we're playing that game. And if I were Maduro, I'd find a way to leave before he goes down.
So it's just Scott. Of course, they're using the excuse of the drug trafficking, as you mentioned earlier, but they, of course, don't admit that Venezuela has billions of barrels of oil, billions of barrels of oil, and then also like this does constitute a war crime. They have been hitting boats that are in the Caribbean that aren't even associated with Venezuela.
Yep. And they've been hitting boats in the Pacific too. Understand that we're fighting it on both fronts. We're blowing up boats in the Pacific. We're blowing up boats in off the coast of Venezuela. This is a flagrant war crime. Hey, Lindsay, I hope you're watching. I know you're not, but maybe you'll watch a clip. Somebody send a clip to Lindsay. Hermann Goring, the Nazi war criminal, corpulent, fat, disgusting pig of a man, whom you remind me of a lot, used to chuckle like this, I would imagine, in his little lavish dinner parties in 1943 and 44 about what Germany was doing, this, that, and the other thing. He ended up biting into a cyanide capsule, committing suicide before he was tried before the Nuremberg tribunals to be hung by the neck until dead. That is your fate if the world was just. You are a jackal of a human being. A jackal of a human being. And you sat there and you chuckled as the American military, whom you once served as a judge advocate, commits war crimes, de facto war crimes. There's no defense about what we're doing. At least one of the admiral in command of Southern Command had the honor to resign and walk away, saying he doesn't want to do this. Maybe more people need to do that as well, because you're asking Americans to commit war crimes. In the Nuremberg defenses, I was just following orders. That doesn't hack it. The manual is quite clear. The Americans pulling the triggers on these attacks are committing war crimes, and they need to be held accountable to. We are supposed to be better than the rest. We're supposed to be the exceptional nation. And what makes us exceptional isn't the power that we have from the military, but the fact that we are a nation supposedly governed by the rule of law. And the rule of law is quite clear when it comes to military force. So Lindsey Graham is a war criminal. He just admitted to it. And so is President Trump, and so is everybody who is in the chain of command that goes down to this. But we're getting ready to commit even greater war crimes. The illegal invasion and occupation of a sovereign state is a war crime. Lindsey Graham is also wrong. The War Powers Act, yes, Congress has abrogated its responsibilities for the declaration of war. The president has certain abilities under the War Powers Act to use military force in the case of imminent danger, in which the immediacy of the danger prohibits him from going to Congress. And so he will have up to 90 days extended to 180 days to go to Congress and explain why he used military force. Here, Lindsey Graham saying we don't have to do that. We're going in. We're going in. There's going to be a land option. We got an air option. We got all these options. Congress really needs to step up to the plate. It's time for the War Powers Act to be either rescinded in totality or modified, so that when we say there has to be an imminent threat, it needs to be, the reason why the president has war powers is if America was attacked. The idea is that you don't have time to assemble Congress and brief Congress. Well, America's not being attacked. We're the ones getting ready to carry out a war of aggression. And now we come back full circle to the Nuremberg tribunals, because war of aggression was defined by the Nuremberg tribunals as the ultimate war crime, because from the war of aggression, all other war crimes emanate. And again, you mentioned oil. James Story, a distinguished American ambassador, was the number 2 at the American embassy in Caracas when we shut that down. And then he moved to Colombia, where he headed up the, basically the U.S. embassy in Venezuela in exile. And he was involved in all of the regime change stuff. I mean, that's the policy of the United States. He implemented that policy. I don't bring it up because I want to say that everything James Story did, I agree with. I want to bring it up by saying that James Story is aware of everything that happened, especially in the first Trump administration, all the covert actions against Venezuela, and that continued on through the Biden administration. And he has said linking Venezuela to narcotics is just the wrong thing. He said, this is about oil. This is about resources. That's all it's about. There is no cognizable case against Maduro or anybody else. He was indicted. You can indict a ham sandwich. All right. The fact that the U.S. government was able to go to the Southern District of New York and get an indictment against Maduro doesn't mean anything. First of all, with all due respect again to the fat jackal named Lindsey Graham, he's a lawyer. You know that an indictment is not a finding of guilt. It's just probable cause. It says that you made a case of probable cause, and you're supposed to bring the person to justice. But what he's saying is, oh, no. This is a finding of guilt, and now we are going to be judge, jury, and executioner and kill this guy. He needs to run because we're coming in and we're eliminating him. If you are an American and you're listening to words, do you understand how disgusting this is? Because I'm just telling you right now, guys, if they can do it to Maduro, they can do it to you. They can do it to me. They can do it to Sabby. They can do it to everybody on this program. They're going to find you guilty before they even have a trial. And if you don't think that the American justice system is the most corrupt justice system in the world, then you haven't been studying American justice. We can indict anybody. We do indict anybody. Hell, they raided my house with a affidavit of probable cause that is still classified. They won't release it. Why? Because it was based upon a lie, a series of lies told by the FBI to a judge who didn't ask any questions and just signed off on it so 40 agents could raid my house. They can do it to anybody, make anything up. And what they did to Maduro was manufacture a case about him being involved in narco trafficking that has no basis in reality or fact. His indictment does not mean he's guilty. All his indictment means is that the U.S. government has decided to label him with something. And that's what they have. And now Lindsey Graham's trying to make the argument. This guy was a judge. He should be disbarred for this. Hell, you couldn't pass law school 101 making the arguments he's making right now. But again, the fact that he's saying it, and the fact that the American people are sitting there going, all right, yeah, so what? Guys, this is over for the constitutional republic. I hope people understand what's happening. The way this Trump administration is behaving, it is literally a stake through the heart. It's damn right it's against the U.S. Constitution. Thank you. Somebody finally gets it. But the problem is, with all due respect, most Americans haven't read the Constitution. They're unfamiliar with it. They don't understand. They have simplistic knowledge. To become an American citizen, if you're an immigrant to this country, you have to take a test on the Constitution. You have to pass that test. I will make a bet with you right now. 9 out of 10 Americans today, natural-born Americans, if given the citizenship test, would fail it, which means we're not qualified to be citizens of this country. Because to be a functioning citizen of this country, you have to embrace the Constitution, live the Constitution, know the Constitution. And Americans right now are just sleepwalking. We just get up in the morning. We live in this bubble of consumerism. We're addicted to digital entertainment, and that's what happens. And it's sad because we're watching the death of the constitutional republic known as the United States of America.
That's right. And I do want to show people this too, because people need to see what's been happening. Venezuela suspends energy agreements with Trinidad after U.S. warship arrived at the island. So we're talking about, again, Trinidad and Tobago, Caribbean islands, who had nothing to do with this, but the U.S. just brings in a warship. From what I understand, I think the president of Trinidad has basically kind of sold out the people from what I've been reading. But it says that Trinidad is now hosting one of the U.S. warships involved in a controversial campaign to destroy the Venezuelan speedboats allegedly carrying drugs to the United States. So for people, I don't know if everybody knows this, but there are U.S. warships in Trinidad to fight Venezuela. This is crazy.
There's U.S. warships. Look, this is speculation because I don't want to be accused of doing anything untoward. As much as I would disagree with a war in Venezuela, I'm not going to put American service members' lives at risk with, let's just put it this way. The CIA has a very large paramilitary division that became even larger after 9/11. Was operating, running private armies in Afghanistan and Iraq, in Syria, And they're building a private army right now for Venezuela. The CIA right now is arming, training, equipping tens of thousands of people from around the region whose job is to carry out various activities when called upon to do so. If you look at the population of Venezuela, you'll see that it's not homogenic, meaning that they're not all the same. You have coastal tribes, you have interior tribes, you have people of different ethnic backgrounds and tribal backgrounds, and we're recruiting people from neighboring countries that have links to this to try and lure these people away. And so all the nations surrounding Venezuela today have large CIA contingents in them, Trinidad and Tobago also. And together with the CIA, we have joint special operations, our tier 1 commando forces. We also have regular special forces that specialize in working with indigenous peoples. And they are deployed now, working aggressively to carry out the president's orders, which the president has acknowledged. He has signed a covert finding authorizing lethal force. That means that the CIA is preparing to assassinate Maduro, assassinate the Venezuelan leadership. We have American special forces that will facilitate this because we can sheep dip them. What's that, Scott? Well, gosh, you remember when SEAL Team 6 went into Pakistan to get Osama bin Laden? They didn't go in as SEAL Team 6. They went under the command and the authority of the CIA because there was a legal problem sending them in as the military. So when they crossed the border, they got sheep dipped, and they were working for the CIA for that. And that's what's happening right now with a whole bunch of our special operations forces. They're being sheep dipped and handed over to the CIA to carry out this covert war. It's happening as we speak right now. Airfields are being prepped, fuels being put in there, munitions are being identified, munition handling. And so when the time comes, you're going to see a surge of American air power into these places like Trinidad and Tobago, and we're going to be using those as jumping off place to carry out military operations against Venezuela.
Wow. It's so like alarming, because I'm just like, I don't think you think a lot of people know what is happening, or that they just buy the narrative that Venezuela, it's all about drugs, and that's why we're coming after Venezuela.
When you say no, that implies knowledge. And knowledge, true knowledge is gained with people studying, a concerted effort to accumulate fact-based information. You don't know something simply because you turned on TV and watched the evening news. You don't know something because you follow a specific politically motivated feed on your Telegram channel or on X channel. That's not knowledge. That's actually, in many cases, ignorance that is disguised as knowledge. To know something, you actually have to show intellectual curiosity. And I would say that when the average American wakes up in the morning, when it comes to Venezuela, there is no intellectual curiosity. What there is laziness, the laziness of a citizen who stopped caring about the real state of affairs in their country because they become so consumed with consumerism, with the daily challenges of, can I get this next Xbox, or can I get this thing, or get that thing, get this thing, and they stop saying, what's actually the best thing that's going to happen for my country today? What's the state of affairs going to be when my children grow up? What world is my children going to inherit? And if I have a son, one of the greatest transformations I ever saw in my life was a friend of mine who was a hardcore Republican and truly believed that we should be going after Saddam because he knew that Saddam Hussein was a bad guy. How did he know it? Well, he saw it on TV. And I told him, I said, because at that time his kids were, young teenagers. And I said, there's going to come a day, because this war isn't going to end the way you think it's going to end. There's going to come a day when your kids are going to be 18 years old and susceptible to going up. Would you want your kids to go to this war? And, the answer was, well, I don't have to worry about that right now. But, when they turned 18, this guy became anti-war in a heartbeat, because suddenly he realized that this conflict that he was urging to take place wasn't worth the sacrifice of his sons. And so I respect that, except when the war started, though, you were willing to let other people's sons go off and die in this war. It was worth their blood, but not the blood. And this is what parents have to ask themselves. If you had a son that's 18 years old, do you view Venezuela as a conflict worthy of the sacrifice of your son's life? Are the Venezuelans doing something to America right now that warrants the sacrifice of your son's life or your daughter's life? You know, and if the answer is no, then what the hell are you doing? If you're not willing to sacrifice your son, if you're not willing to sacrifice your daughter, then why are you willing to sit back and let other Americans sacrifice their sons and their daughters? If it's not worth your blood, it's not worth anybody's blood. And that's how we have to view Venezuela. It's not worth the blood of a single American at all. We shouldn't be there. They don't pose a threat against us. And this should be a war that we all oppose. But unless you have skin in the game, it's very difficult for people to become engaged. We just become addicted to the news that the mainstream, that the establishment is spoon feeding us.
Well said there, Scott. That's a good thing. Like, people, you have to put yourself in their shoes. Like, you know, you shouldn't even have to do that. But it's like when you put it in those terms, then people start to see and feel a little bit differently because it involves them or someone close to them. But that's a good way of putting it. Scott, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Anything you have coming up that you want to promote?
Look, I'm almost singularly focused on trying to stop a nuclear war between Russia and the United States. So I'm heading back to Russia in November to continue the project called the Russia House. People can support this. You know, there's hopefully some very interesting things can come about from this trip that talk about arms control, talk about bettering U.S.-Russian relations. So if you go to my Substack page, Real Scott Ritter, or just go to scottritter.com, you can read about this. And if you can support, Dan, I will make this point. To work in Russia today, you have to be very careful because of the legal environment. The sanctions are real. And that means that, you know, anybody like myself who's going to go over there and do the work, I have to pay for everything. And if you've taken a look at my paycheck, contrary to popular belief, I don't receive money from Vladimir Putin or anybody else for that matter. I write for a living and I get money from my Substack page, and that pays the bills. It doesn't create this operational fund. So to go to Russia to conduct what I call citizens diplomacy requires the support of the American citizen. And if it's something you believe in and you would like to help, go to scottritter.com. There's a donation page, and I can promise you anything you donate will be put to very, very effective use trying to stop a nuclear war between the United States and Russia.
All right. Check that out, you guys. Scott, thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Sabby.
Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Scott Ritter there. Let's show that poll, and then Eric's going to close out the show. I'm curious to see how many people know someone that is on SNAP or someone that works that's a federal employee. Oh, this is an interesting number here. Okay, do you know someone impacted by the government shutdown? 34% said, I know people on SNAP. 11% said, I know government employees. 22% said, I know government employees and people on SNAP, and 33% said no. That's an interesting number there. 1,956 people voted. That is interesting. Everybody didn't vote. Why don't everybody vote? Sorry. But that's
can't get everybody.
I know. I'm like, everybody didn't vote.
We got a decent turnout.
I know, but everybody didn't vote. Okay. Anywho, oh, wait a minute. I didn't think about the fact that people who are internationals also can't vote.
Well, they can vote in your poll.
No, not really. Because like if they live in another country, how would they know someone on Snap?
Right, but they could still vote. Just so they don't
Oh,
know. I
okay.
don't know.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I guess they could have said no. Okay, gotcha. All
Oh,
righty.
it was a good poll, regardless.
Yeah, I took time to write that book. Anywho, that's it for me, guys. You guys know Eric's gonna close out the show. He'll go through the rest of the super chats, and that's a wrap for me. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.
All right, we're gonna let Sabby go on her way for now. We're trying to press the right button here. Well, that ain't it. There we go. All right. So yeah, we had a good interview, good stuff tonight. I think, you know, what it makes me think of. I mean, one of the things that people were saying is, you know, what do we do about all this? And so, if you go to so on the topic of what do we do about all this, right? If you go to 11 demands. Where'd it go? Wait, oh, there we go. 11demands.org, right? You can check out some of the ideas that, you know, about what we do about this stuff. And I'm going to do a readout just quickly here of, if you go to 11 Demands Substack, this is actually the lead article, you know, on the Substack, and it's called, you know, the core problem, the challenge, and the solution. And, you know, there's a picture here of our cast of characters, you know, the billionaires, and, you know, on the other side, you know, the people is what kind of is being represented on the bottom. In engineering, there's a concept called a root cause analysis, or an RCA. And the idea is that in order to fully understand a broken system, one needs to connect the dots and dig down to the root causes. Only after doing that can we determine the real solutions. Applying this concept to the problems in politics of today can have powerful results. Invariably, the digging leads us to the core problem, the root cause. Our capitalist system pushes massive wealth and resources into the hands of a small number of billionaires, and they use those resources to corrupt the government to act in their interests, further increasing their wealth, on and on. It's the MC part of MCDS, MC, money and corruption. So what do we, the 99%, do about it? The key player in this system is government. As long as our government is captured by that top 0.1%, and their instruments, the mega corporations, the downward slide of degradation and destruction will continue. Any serious root cause analysis leads to this conclusion. Conversely, a decorrupted government, one that is truly acting in the interests of the 99%, could take any number of actions that would improve the material conditions of average people. In the 11 demands list, if you look through demands 2 through 11, you'll see descriptions of these actions. But all of them depend on demand number 1, fix big money in politics and government. So, of course, there's the question, how do we get there? You know, many people are fond of saying, you know, these demands are nothing unless they have some kind of power to back them up. The power is us. And this is the challenge. How do we inspire a mass movement that is clear about what it needs and is unwilling to settle for less? To get to that kind of steam, it has to be a demands first movement, one that first calls out the money and corruption, but then always follows up with clear demands and solutions. This is MCDS in action, money, corruption, demand, solutions. The mission of the 11 Demands Collective is to be the spark. When discussing the latest daily drama and controversy, always bring it back to this. What are our demands? There is always a connection to one of the 11 demands, and it always leads to the same conclusion. We must decorrupt our government. Big things are happening, and it's up to us to stop waiting for our quote-unquote leaders to do the right thing. So be a part of the 11 Demands Collective and be a part of the solution. And you know, 11 Demands Collective, you can click through to it. It's about being part of this, about being really tuned into, well, MCDS is the big part of it. You know, let me bring up this part. You know, the 11 Demands Pledge is, you know, always describe, educate people on the corruption, identify the core problem, describe the solutions, in demand number 1, which gets into a constitutional amendment. Money's not speech. Corporations aren't people. It gets into, real regulations. It's about clean elections. It's things like that. And, the biggest thing I'd ask of people is to always keep in mind MCDS, money, corruption, demand, solutions. If you use that framework to analyze things and look at things through that, I think you can get a clear vision of what's going on. All right, so there's a bit of 11 demands, and as always, you can find it, at 11demands.org. Now we got some super chats, some different chats built up here. Let's see what we got. And some of these go back to the earlier stories. Thanks for this one from Netanyahu, who's on the Epstein list. Thanks for the super chat. He says, people are scared to speak up against Zionism. Yeah, I mean, one way I like to phrase it is the system has, it's a system of carrots and sticks. And if you're on the wrong side of that, you get the stick. But there are lots of carrots that, we see people taking. And also, thanks also for this one. Tucker is obviously CIA, he says. Thanks for that. And shout out to Daniel becoming a new member. We always like the new members. And thanks for this one, David Giltonen, who says, why does Fuentes look like Max Payne's little bro? That is a good question. I think, David, because they're both pretty fake, right? And thanks for the super chat, Matless X, who says, Sab, this afternoon, Candace said she believes she and Charlie were given handlers around 2018. That is how she ended up at PragerU and Daily Wire. Nick Fuentes seems to be suggesting the same thing. Yeah, and it can be an overt thing, like a handler that's paid and assigned to a certain person to manage them. It can also be less overt, things like PR agencies and just who work with social media. And, there's lots of ways to manage the narrative, and managing the narrative is very important to the billionaire class, because there are so fewer of them than there are of us. And if enough people wake up to what's really going on, they're going to be in trouble. So they have to keep us away from figuring it all out, really. And thanks to the super chat, Louis James. I'm a caregiver for my mom who's on Snap. We got sad emojis. Yeah, I hear you. That's the hard part of all this. On one level, we talk about politics and corruption and how it's a game, about how it's a game, and these people aren't real about what they're doing and what they're saying. But the problem is their actions, get real on the tough end of it, and people are really suffering and suffering more. And that always needs to be part of what drives us to make a better world. Excuse me. And thanks for the super chat, JJ413, who says, I'm sick of everyone talking about Nick Fuentes. He's a cornball. Yeah, I mean, my joke was that, like, if he's a Fed, like, is he really the best they could get? And thanks for the super chat, Brad. Nick equals MBA. Excuse me, I'll try this again. Nick equals FBI equals internal. Tucker equals CIA equals international. The two agencies didn't talk about their sheepdog psyops until now. Also, only Sith deal in absolutes. And thanks for the super chat, Mark. It says TEDx endocannabinoid system. All right. And thanks for the super chat, Nevia. Let's focus on real life Hollywood. Let's focus on real life. Hollyweird is a distraction. Yeah, that's certainly part of the game, right? Is to keep people distracted and kind of off of what's really going on. And thanks for this one, Matless X. Interesting that ISIS and now these ISIS-related gangs can attack Palestinians, Syrians, Iraqis, etc., but don't seem to have an appetite for Israelis, right? Funny how that works, right? And I think I'm just going to take a little jump over to what's happening on the Rockfin, because I think we got some chats there from Mr. Roger. Let's see what we got. Pink. All right. Set up for this. Thanks for the tipped comment on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. If anyone wants to know what Zoran is about, they can just look at his sponsored legislation, like, quote, not on our dime, ending New York funding of Israel Settler Violence Act, which prohibits not-for-profit corporations from engaging in unauthorized support of Israeli settlement activity. Protect our privacy, POP Act, limiting the use of drones and other things. It gets a bit long, Roger, so I'm going to skip ahead a bit. Adult Care Facility Transparency Act requires public comment on applications for new adult care facilities. Dignity in Pregnancy and Childbirth Act, requiring hospitals to implement evidence-based implicit bias training. We got a Hudson Valley Power Authority Act, establishing Hudson Valley Power Authority. Other initiatives, housing justice. You're doing a lot on the copy and paste here, Roger. We got budget advocacy, called for increased funding of public services. Sammy's Law, he's urged to pass it, which aims to reduce traffic fatalities. All right, and then Roger says, then look at legislation written by others in the assembly that he signed on to as co-sponsor. All this made up stuff people are pushing onto him. Also, Matt looking like RFK Jr., while Sab looking like Glenn Greenwald, interviewing him, making him squirm like Kennedy. All right, and thanks very much, Dave Burt, for the paid comments, for the tip comments, I'll say, on Rockfin, saying thank you, Scott and Sabs, and leaving a tip, and appreciate you, Dave and Roger, out there on the Rockfins. And then I just have a couple more here to read from the super chat from the YouTube queue. Thanks for the super chat, Chip Walter. Lindsey Graham reminds me of the BTK serial killer from Wichita. Okay. And thanks to the super chat, Marlon Wells. Another war crime robbery, claiming to be the victim sounds like the Blue Star strategy for South America. All right. I think that is going to about do us for tonight. And until then, you can catch our next, there'll be clips, right? We always have clips from the show. So if you missed some of the show or previous live stream, you can always find clips on the Sabby Sabs YouTube channel. So always look out for those. Make sure you signed up to the Sabby Sabs Substack, so you'll get notices and updates and things like that. And the next live show will be this Thursday, right? We're on Tuesday today, so that'll be Thursday at 8. So check out Sabby Sabs then, and that's going to do us. And until then, we say have a good night and keep up the fight. We'll see you next time. All right, thanks everyone.